Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP really doesn't like musicals. Am I the jerk for refusing to watch The Sound of Music with my girlfriend and her sister? I, 22 male, am spending Christmas with my girlfriend who's 22 and her family this year, and things have been mostly great, until this one incident with The Sound of Music. A few nights ago, she and her younger sister, who's 17, wanted to watch it together because it's their Christmas tradition. They love this movie, and they've been watching it every year for as long as they can remember. Now, I'm not a fan of musicals. No offense to anyone who loves them, but I just can't deal with the singing and dancing every 5 minutes. It's so over the top and unrealistic to me, and I can't suspend my disbelief enough to get into it. Knowing this about myself, I figured I'd be fine just to opt out. So when my girlfriend asked if I'd watch it with them, I said, "No, you guys go ahead and enjoy it. I'll do something else." She tried to convince me, "Oh, come on, give it a try. I bet you'll love it if you just watch it with us." But I stood my ground. "No, I'm fine. I'm not into musicals. You two have fun though." She kept pressing. "It's not like every musical. This one's a classic. You'll at least appreciate the story." I shrugged. "Seriously, you guys watch it. I'll find something else to do." I left the room after that because I thought we were good. I could hear them laughing and singing along from the other room, so I figured all was well. Fast forward to the next day, and she's giving me the cold shoulder. Like, not outright mean, but distant. I finally asked, "What's wrong? You've been weird all day." She sighed, clearly annoyed. "It was rude of you to just dismiss The Sound of Music without even trying to watch it. You don't even know if you'd hate it because you've never seen it." I was taken aback. "Babe, you know I hate musicals. Why would I want to sit through one when I know I won't enjoy it?" "You don't know that," she shot back. "And even if you didn't like it, you could have just watched it with us because it's something I wanted to share with you. It's not just a movie, it's tradition." At this point, I was getting frustrated. "So now I'm the bad guy for not wanting to spend 2.5 hours watching people sing about raindrops on roses and whatever? That's not fair. I gave you the space to enjoy it with your sister." That's when she lost it. "You don't get it, do you? It's not about the stupid movie. It's about the fact that I wanted to do something special with you, something that means a lot to me. And instead of even pretending to care, you just walked out like it was beneath you. You always do this with stuff I like that you don't. You don't even try." Her voice cracked as she said it, and honestly, it stung. She wasn't wrong about me brushing off her interest sometimes, but this was just a movie. Feeling defensive, I said, "It's not that deep, okay? It's just not my thing." She got even angrier. "You don't think it's that deep? That's exactly the problem. It's always just about you and what you want to do. God forbid I ask you to watch something meaningful to me. Forget it. Next time, don't even bother asking me to do anything for you." She stormed off, leaving me standing there like an idiot. And now things are so awkward. She's still mad, her sister is giving me side eyes, and I feel like I'm being painted as the Grinch of the family. So, am I the jerk for not watching The Sound of Music with them? Or was this just one of those things that got blown way out of proportion? You're the jerk. My husband hates musicals, but every year for Christmas, he takes me to see my favorite in the theater and pays about $200 for tickets because he loves me, and he doesn't complain even though I know he's not a fan. He also watches musicals with me if I want to watch them. I also ran a marathon with him even though I hate running because I love him. I did a mud run in the mountains with him and crawled under barbed wire. It was terrible. I go camping with him in the backcountry without showers or toilets. Sometimes we suck it up and do things we don't like for the people we love because it matters to them, not because it's important to you. One of the necessary skills to learn in order to have a loving and successful long-term relationship is compromise. And get this, when you actually love the other person, it's actually fun to compromise with them, even if it's about doing something that they love. You do it because there will be times when you want her to do something with you that she's not fond of doing. You do it because you want to make her happy, because you want to learn all you can about her and what she likes. Mostly though, you do it simply because you love them. By the way, The Sound of Music, adjusted for inflation, is the highest grossing musical of all time. Wicked won't even come close. And one of the, adjusted for inflation, top 5 grossing films of all time. It's really good. Take it from someone who doesn't necessarily like musicals. Everyone sucks here. Many families have their own Christmas movie traditions, and I think it would have meant a lot to your girlfriend if you'd just given it a chance since she seems to love it. And honestly, you could have. It's one movie, and it's not a horror movie where people genuinely feel scared. You would probably just cringe not even halfway through. It's not only a musical, but an old one. So yeah, a little bit of a jerk here. Sometimes cringing through a movie to make your partner really happy is an okay compromise. but she's a bit of a jerk for making it a massive issue and not talking to you though as well. If you hate musicals with all your heart, I guess you need to find some new movie tradition. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Maybe they could compromise by skipping through the parts with the singing. But those are the best parts. Have you even seen Sound of Music? Oh, don't start with me, Reddit boy. My boyfriend called me a gold digger, so I left. Now he wants my help to pay the rent. I, 30 female, have been with my boyfriend, who's 34, for 2 years, and we moved in together 6 months ago. At first, everything seemed great. We had a clear agreement that we'd split bills and chores 50-50 until we decided to have kids. If that happened, the understanding was that I'd handle more of the child-rearing responsibilities while he'd contribute more financially and around the house to offset the physical and career sacrifices I'd make. It felt like we were on the same page in partnership about being fair and balanced. 2 months ago, he got a promotion with a decent pay bump, which led us to adjust how we split the bills. He started paying a bit more, which was fair since he now earned more. But then, almost out of nowhere, he started slacking off on his share of the chores. At first, it was minor stuff like skipping the dishes or forgetting to do the laundry. I figured he was just busy or tired, so I let it slide. But then it escalated. He started spending entire weekends on the couch, watching me do both my chores and his while half of his work piled up. When I brought it up, he blamed it on stress and workload, even though we both have desk jobs in similar corporate fields. It's not like he's doing physically demanding labor. Still, I tried to be understanding, but things only got worse. The breaking point came when I noticed a pot in the kitchen that was supposed to be clean. It was growing mold. He hadn't even attempted to wash it. Instead, he slapped the lid back on and left it sitting there, hoping I wouldn't notice. I was furious. It got so bad that I had to take a day off work just to catch up on all the cleaning he had neglected. But the final straw came when it was his turn to buy groceries, and he just didn't. No warning, no apology. Usually if one of us is too busy or tired, we at least give the other a heads up so we can plan accordingly. This time, he left us with nothing. After that, I sat him down and told him that if he couldn't handle chores anymore, we'd need to hire a cleaner and split the cost. His response? He didn't want a stranger in our home. Fine, I said, then we'd need to start ordering groceries online and paying the delivery fee. He called me frivolous with money. At that point, I suggested another option. I'd take on more household responsibilities, but to do so, I'd need to cut my work week down to 4 days. Since that would affect my career and income, I'd expect him to compensate me for the sacrifice, including paying me a fair hourly rate for the extra chores, essentially the going rate for a housekeeper. You'd have thought I suggested robbing a bank. He looked completely stunned and couldn't come up with a single argument, which was ironic since he had had an answer for everything up to that point. That's when I started to realize he might have been trying to manipulate me into an arrangement that suited him and only him. And if he really loved me, why would he do that? Feeling suspicious, I asked if his friends had been influencing him. I know they struggled to keep their relationships and often shared their outdated views. His response? He said, "You should be happy to look after the house." Then he called me a gold digger. I was floored. I wasn't asking for designer bags or luxury vacations, just fairness and respect for my time and effort. So I called him out right back. I said, "If anyone here is a gold digger, it's you. You want a private chef and a housekeeper for free." I admit I was angry by this point, so I told him to stop being so proud of his promotion if he couldn't afford basic help and instead try to manipulate me into doing everything for him. I added that by taking time off work to clean up after him, I'd essentially be paying for the privilege of doing his chores. I told him he was dragging me down when we were supposed to be building each other up, and with that, I started packing my stuff. The apartment is his, so I wasn't going to stick around and play housemate while being disrespected. As I packed, he kept saying I'd see sense and that I was overreacting, but I wasn't buying it. I felt so embarrassed that I hadn't noticed these red flags earlier. I wasted 2 years on someone who turned out to be such a disappointment. As I loaded my car, I told him not to contact me. I blocked him on everything, but now he's using mutual friends to send me messages and voice notes. Most of our friends are on my side. They think he's being pathetic. One of our mutual guy friends mentioned that my ex has been listening to those podcasts recently. I'm convinced that's where he got the idea to stall my future while putting me in my place to serve his goals. It's infuriating. He loved the ideas from those podcasts more than he loved me, and now he's mad that I won't feel sorry for him struggling to afford rent without my help. If anyone else has been in a similar situation, how did you handle it? I'm kicking myself for letting things get this bad before addressing them. Moving forward, I'm not entering into another relationship without laying out clear expectations up front. I'm done with men who think they're entitled to free labor just because society tells them it's worthless compared to what they do. Congratulations, you dodged a big bullet. His issues will be bigger and bigger. Am I the jerk for refusing to share my homemade meals with my roommate's boyfriend? So I, 25 female, have a roommate, Sarah, who's 26, who's been dating this guy, Tom, who's 28, for a couple of months now. I'm pretty chill about her having him over because, hey, it's her space too. For context, I cook most of my meals from scratch, not because I'm some health nut, but because it's cheaper, healthier, and honestly kind of fun. Sarah's never had an issue with it, and occasionally, if I make extra, I'll share with her. It's always been a casual, hey, I made too much, help yourself kind of thing. No drama. Enter Tom. At first, he was just here occasionally, and I didn't pay much attention to him. But over the past few weeks, his visits have gone from every so often to basically every day. And while that's fine in theory, the dude started helping himself to my food. Not just a bite here or there, full portions. He'd pop into the fridge, grab whatever looked good, and scarf it down without even asking, without replacing anything, and without even a simple thanks. At first, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to cause tension. Plus, I figured maybe it was a one-off thing. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The last straw came last week when I got home from work, already starving, only to find the container of pasta I'd prepped for my lunch the next day completely gone. Tom had eaten the entire thing. This was the moment I decided to say something. I pulled Sarah aside and told her I didn't appreciate Tom eating my food. Her reaction? She kind of shrugged it off, saying, "Oh, he's just comfortable here. It's not a big deal." I told her it is a big deal because I budget and plan my meals for the week. I can't just replace stuff on a whim without messing up my whole system. I also made it clear that I wouldn't be sharing food anymore and asked her to pass that along to Tom. She gave me this half-hearted, yeah, I'll tell him, and I thought that would be the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. Yesterday, I made a big pot of chili, a recipe I've been tweaking for months and was really excited about. I even planned to freeze some for later meals. While I was out running errands, Tom came over. When I got back, I opened the fridge and noticed that a big chunk of the chili was missing. Not a small serving, a big chunk. I was furious. I went straight to Sarah and told her this was exactly what I'd been talking about and that it needed to stop immediately. Her response? She rolled her eyes and said I was overreacting and stingy for not wanting to share food. She tried to justify it by saying it was just a couple of bites, which, let's be real, it wasn't. At that point, I lost it and told her, I'm not your boyfriend's personal chef and I don't owe him free meals. If he's hungry, he can bring his own food or go buy some. Now things are super tense in the apartment. Sarah's been sulking and giving me the silent treatment, and Tom's been avoiding eye contact altogether. I can tell she's told him what I said because he's been acting all weird and passive-aggressive. Part of me feels guilty because I don't like conflict, but the other part of me is like, why should I feel bad for wanting basic boundaries? Am I the bad guy here, or do I have a point? Not the jerk, period. Tom sounds like a jerk and a mooch. You should tell Tom directly that he needs to stop eating your food. You've done nothing wrong. Don't let Tom and Sarah quietly act superior. Confront them both together and tell them exactly what you've laid out here and that you expect him to behave like a grown adult human and stop stealing your food. Use the ugly words, like steal. He's stealing your food. Sure, he's comfortable being a thief, and now they're both working on you to get their way. Not the jerk. Don't feel guilty. They're manipulating you. Am I the jerk for not letting a woman cut the line at the grocery store? Tonight after work, I hit up the grocery store to grab a few things for dinner. Literally 5 items. It was one of those quick trips where you hope to get in and out without too much hassle. I got in line behind an older woman who was slowly unloading her groceries onto the belt. No big deal. She was the only person in front of me and I was just waiting my turn. Then out of nowhere, another woman sidles up beside my cart, trying to slip in front of me like she's merging on a freeway. I gave her the, "What are you doing?" look, and she hits me with, "Oh, I was here before, but I went to see if the other line was moving faster." Okay. I said, "All right, but you weren't here when I got in line, so," shrug. She doubled down, insisting she was there first and only stepped away for a minute, so I should let her back in. I was polite but firm. "I didn't see you here when I joined the line," I said, "so you can either get behind me or go to the back of the other line." At this point, she became more aggressive, showing me her basket like it's her golden ticket. She only had 4 packs of Jell-O. "Look," she said, "I just have a few things." I gestured to my own cart, which had about the same number of items, and said, "Yeah, me too. I'm not moving." She started to get visibly annoyed, like this was some kind of life or death situation. Then she hit me with the classic guilt trip. So, you're not going to let me back in? Where's your Christmas spirit? That was the breaking point. I'd been polite up until then, but the entitlement was unreal. I said, don't pull that crap. Here's the thing. If she had been in front of me when I got in line and had asked nicely to hold her spot, I would have been fine with it, no problem at all. But she wasn't. She just assumed she could waltz back into the line like the world revolved around her. She glared at me, practically spitting out, I hope you have a Merry Christmas, dripping with sarcasm before storming off to another cashier. The kicker? We both walked out of the store at the same time. All that drama for nothing. So, what's the verdict? Am I the jerk for not letting her cut in line and calling out her lame excuses? Not the jerk. She gambled and lost. She would have most likely had a different experience if she had asked you first, but she just assumed you'd roll over. I never let people cut the line on me. Ask and I'll probably say yes. Assume and it's a hard no. Want to create a problem from something meaningless? Have fun with minimum cursor speed. I, 24 female, work as a cashier at this store, but only until the end of December because they needed extra help for the holiday rush. Honestly, I'm not too concerned about keeping this job or bending over backward for people who make my life harder. It's temporary, and I'm counting down the days. The problem is my manager. From day one, she's had it out for me and another coworker too, so at least I know it's not personal. She's accused me of everything under the sun. If there's a money discrepancy in the register, she says it's my fault. If something electronic mysteriously breaks, somehow that's also on me. Mind you, I haven't even touched most of the stuff she blames me for. Most of the time I just ignore her. I've even walked away mid-rant, leaving her talking to herself. But every now and then she crosses the line and we have what you might call disagreements. The last one was the dumbest yet. So I work at the same computer all day and I like to speed up the cursor sensitivity. It makes things faster and easier for me, especially when we're slammed. It takes literally 5 seconds to switch back to default if someone else needs to use the computer. No big deal, right? Apparently, it is a big deal. She called me into a meeting, aka her just finding an excuse to nag me, and said I'd been creating issues within the team by changing the cursor speed. She claimed other coworkers, who only use the computer for an hour tops during my lunch break, have been complaining about it being too fast. I'm standing there like, seriously? Complaints about the cursor speed? This is what we're doing now? At this point, my patience was already hanging by a thread. I told her she was being childish, and to prove my point, I demonstrated how quickly and easily the settings could be changed back. It literally took me 5 seconds. See? Not a big deal, I said, with enough sarcasm to make my feelings crystal clear. As I turned to walk away, she said, well, then you need to change it back to default every time you leave. And that's when my petty meter hit full capacity. Now, every time I go on a break, lunch, or leave my shift, I don't just set the cursor back to default. Oh no, I take it a step further. I lower the sensitivity to the absolute slowest setting possible. I'm talking molasses slow. Not only do I adjust it in Windows, but I also mess with the mouse settings themselves. It's like watching someone try to move the cursor through quicksand. The best part? I make sure to do it when I know she'll be the one using the computer next, especially if there's a customer standing in front of her waiting to pay. Watching her painfully drag the cursor on the screen 1 inch at a time while trying not to blow a gasket in front of the customer is chef's kiss. She hasn't said a word to me about it since, but I can feel the laser beams of hatred she's shooting at me every time she struggles with the settings. I just smile and keep doing my job. Malicious, yes. Compliance, not so sure. I'd be upset if someone kept changing settings of a common workstation and not changing it back when they're finished. Why do I have to return the settings to default every time you change it when I just want to get stuff done? I expect you'll be job hunting soon if you're calling your supervisor childish. Sounds like a toxic work environment for both sides. Just be sure when the crap hits the fan, you claim you're returning it to the speed you keep finding it at. Behaving like this, and then coming here to brag about it, shows alarming immaturity and entitlement. I understand that you already have a contentious relationship with your supervisor, but asking you to put the settings of your shared computer back to the default before your lunch break isn't unreasonable. Before you find a job you care about keeping, I suggest growing up a bit. OP. I get the criticism you mention, yet the computer is my responsibility, so they should be changing the settings to the default I've set instead. If anything happens to it, I'm sure they would hold me responsible, so I'm having the small advantage of setting the default mouse speed to my liking as I use it the entire shift myself. My default? It's all about you. You walk away from your manager while she's still talking to you and wonder why you're being targeted. Let me be clear. Changing the mouse speed to your preference while you're working is fine. Leaving it there or changing it to be super slow is selfish and childish. Consider also that you're inconveniencing your coworkers with the mouse settings as revenge against your boss. Your actions in this situation don't make you look good. My mother-in-law demands I eat food that I'm allergic to. I, 28 female, have been married to my husband, 31 male, for 5 years. As his parents and siblings live in a different city, which is quite a drive away, over 4 hours, we tend to stay for a few days when we go and visit them. Even though he has a fairly large family and a spacious house, for some reason, they only have one bathroom with 6+ people living in the house permanently, so there can be quite a queue at times. I promise this will be important later. Now, I have a few allergies. I'm allergic to pretty much any type of meat except domestic birds, chicken, turkey, and duck. I'm fine with seafood. I'm also somewhat lactose intolerant. While my allergies are not deadly, they will result in a trip to the hospital as they affect me pretty badly, and lactose intolerant just causes really upset stomach. Due to this, me and my husband follow a rule where I have dishes containing dairy if I will be at home the next day. If we're going somewhere, I normally adapt to vegetarian or vegan diet to avoid any issues. I'm also fine cooking the meats for my husband and just super careful about cross-contamination, so we have separate pans for different meats. As we were going to stay for a few days at my in-laws' house, I made sure we did some shopping so I could bring some food with me, which I know I can eat as the shops are closed on Christmas. Plant-based milk, juices, cooked turkey breast, some veggies, and some snacks. During Christmas Day, I was busy with my sister-in-law until dinner, so by the time dinner came, I got quite hungry. At the dinner table, I could see turkey, but because it was wrapped in bacon, I couldn't eat it, as it would trigger my allergic reaction. I wasn't blaming my mother-in-law, since it was only the second Christmas we were celebrating with them, and just decided to have the turkey that I made alongside with some veggies to only discover that it was eaten. Apparently, my husband got really hungry and made sandwiches with it. I wasn't angry, so ended up just eating other veggies at the table, like carrots, peas, parsnips, etc., since roasted potatoes were made with animal fat and mash had milk and butter in it. However, my mother-in-law was feeling weird and kept trying to make me try her turkey as she removed the bacon, so I had to explain to her multiple times that it is contaminated and not safe for me to eat. After Christmas and after we left my in-laws, my husband let me know that they were not impressed with how picky I was and how I have insulted my mother-in-law's cooking by behaving like an entitled jerk. I don't think I did anything wrong here. Not the jerk. Your husband ate the food you specifically brought for yourself because of your allergy and then told you he wasn't impressed by the way you behaved? Seriously? You say you weren't angry about it. I'll be angry for you then, because I think that's absolute BS. This sounds like an allergy test. That's when family members don't think you are actually allergic and give you a choice in eating the allergen or starving. The next step is sneaking invisible allergens in your food and not telling you. And it sounds like your husband may have been in on it. I read this and I was like, yeah, I'd not stay married to this guy for long. Who eats the food their spouse specifically cooked for herself so she wouldn't need a trip to the hospital? Leaving her to eat only veggies and then criticizing her for it? OP, you're far too nice. These people, including your husband, are stomping all over your carefully planned allergy management. Then when you change your eating to avoid pain and embarrassment again, they figure, well, she didn't lash out at us, so what we did was obviously okay. No, get angry. This is on them and only on them. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her in-laws? Please let us know. I'd have gone ham on those mashed potatoes and blown up that bathroom the next day. Mess around and find out, in-laws. Am I the jerk for stopping the mother of my child from moving? When I, male 24, was in uni, I went on a few dates with Amy, who was 22, and we hooked up a couple of times. It didn't work out, but we parted on friendly enough terms. A few months later, I hear through a mutual friend that she's pregnant, and I call her to ask if the baby is mine. She ignored my calls, so I went around her house. We both did uni in our home city, and her mom told me that she wasn't interested in seeing me and it wasn't my business. So I left and didn't come around again. I thought the baby was probably mine, though couldn't be sure obviously. So I went to a solicitor in town and asked what I could do, and they told me I had to wait until the baby was born. Fast forward a few months, and I hear she had the baby, so I go back to the solicitor, and they go to court for me to find out if I'm the father, get parental rights and responsibilities and contact with the baby. I wanted some residence too, like 2 nights a week or something, but the solicitor told me I probably wouldn't get that at the time, and that seemed fair enough to me. Amy never contested anything I asked for in court, so I got it all, and I started going around her house with my mom to see the baby. He's such a cool wee guy. His mom named him without asking me before I got my PRRs, which I'm a bit upset about, but nothing I can do about it. Amy's been mostly okay with me, but her mom is always really cold and a bit difficult. A couple of weeks ago, Amy told me that she was moving to take a new job and taking the baby with her. The job is a really exciting position at a financial firm in the capital city, and probably not the sort of opportunity she'd have here. The capital is not too far away, 40 minutes on the train, but I was unhappy that I would have to travel further for contact. Amy wasn't interested in talking about it and said she was the main parent and I would just have to make it work. I was really upset, so I went back to my solicitor, and they have asked for a specific issue order to stop the baby's address from being moved to a different city. The court won't decide for another couple of weeks, but I got a call from Amy's mom saying I was selfishly trying to ruin Amy's future and she should be able to make the decision because she gave birth, and if I wanted to say, I should have married her before getting her pregnant. Am I the jerk for going to court and interfering with Amy's future? Edit to address some recurring points. I didn't get a DNA test. I asked the court for declarator. That was the father, and they served the papers on Amy, and she decided not to participate in the court process. I gave evidence about our relationship and my interactions with Amy since then. Amy herself has never denied that I am the father. Her position was just that it was none of my business. I feel like folks are concentrating on this and trying to make it out that I'm pushing some kind of lie when it's not something that's actually in doubt. I'm not seeking a relationship with Amy or trying to reinsert myself in her life or control her. All I want is to be a co-parent with her. I don't really understand the comment saying she doesn't want a relationship with me, therefore I shouldn't have tried to be involved in my kid's life. I get that it's not a great distance, especially compared to some American cities, and I get that it might look like I'm just interested in my convenience, but I'm really worried that if the trains are on strike or I miss a train or whatever and it impedes my contact, then I will look bad when I ask to have residential time with the baby. I'm hoping to eventually be an equal parent, and I'm scared that this is in danger. I've been knocked a bit by all negative responses, so I'm going to think about what the best solution might be. You're the jerk. I could understand if she wanted to take your kid 4 hours away, but 40 minutes is nothing. Better opportunities for Amy will create a better life for your son. By preventing her from moving, you're not only sabotaging Amy, you're impacting your baby too. Why? Because you're too lazy and selfish to travel 40 minutes. You're the jerk. If she was moving far away, you wouldn't be. But 40 minutes is a normal commute for anything, like within the same city in metro commute time. Perfectly capable for you to maintain your relationship with your kid. I don't know your local law, but I'm doubtful you will succeed. You're the jerk. All this seems kinda creepy. She's not interested in building a relationship with you. Take the 40-minute commute and see your kid. Stop preventing her from improving her life and thereby your kid's life too. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Amy? Please let us know. 40 minutes is a long commute? That's about how long it takes us to get to Walmart. I can't prop the door open? Alrighty then. Been sitting on this story for a few months now. I work for a small moving company in my city. We move furniture and decor to many different places throughout the city. We got a call about moving a large load of bookshelves to a rather large industrial building. We loaded up 2 18-foot box trucks full of shelves and were ready to move. When we arrived at the building, we pulled around to the loading dock and began offloading the shelves. As we were bringing stuff off the truck, I went to building security to open the door. There had been some recent crime in our area and everyone was locking all of the doors. They handed me a doorstop and told me I could prop the door open since we have a large load. So I propped open the door and we got going. We no more had the first pallet off the truck when the building's maintenance manager came running towards us. He screamed at us, "What are you doing? You can't have that door propped open." Now this man looked like he was somewhere between the ages of 76 and 105. He was as red as I'd ever seen anyone. I calmly told him that security gave me a doorstop and told me since we have such a large load, we could keep the door propped open. Of course, he wasn't having it. "I don't care what security told you. You can't have this door propped open." At this point, my Native American temper got the better of me. I replied, "Yes, sir." I walked over to the door and picked up the doorstop. I walked back to security and explained the situation. They rolled their eyes and explained that this grouchy old fossil is always causing problems all over the building. They told me I could still prop open the door, but now I was mad and was feeling petty. He doesn't want us to prop the door open? Alrighty then. There was a buzzer outside of the door, so I buzzed security asking them if they could open the door. Well, guess whose office was right by said door, and thus guess who security called to open the door and let us in? That's right, Fossil Man that was 2 days older than dirt. He opened the door and let us in. We made our delivery and came back to grab another pallet. I again buzzed security, and they again asked Fossil Man to let us in. This happened twice more before he stopped me and said, "You know, if you wanted to keep that door open, you can, since you have such a big load." I replied with the biggest smile on my face, "Oh no, sir. This door cannot be propped open. I wouldn't want to upset anyone by doing that." He looked at me with a look on his face that was somewhere between crazy and the realization that he had made a huge mistake. 18 pallets later, we had the load delivered, and every single time, guess who had to let us in? It took us a little over 2 hours to get everything finished. The last pallet we delivered, I poked my head into Fossil Man's office and said, "Thank you so much for all your help." I'm pretty sure he popped a blood vessel. Am I the jerk for leaving a pregnant woman outside? Okay, so I, 19 female, am autistic, and my sister, 30 female, asked me if I could come over to her house to babysit for her while she and her husband went out on a much-needed date night. I had some reservations about this, and I've never supervised the kids alone. She usually brought them to my parents' house, and my parents mainly watched them while I did my thing, but also kept an eye on them and kept them entertained. However, my sister assured me that all will be well, and she'll write me a list of instructions to follow, and it will be easy. I asked if I could have a friend over with me, but she said no, and under no circumstances am I to allow strangers in her house. Anyways, 3 hours in, and a pregnant lady comes knocking, and she was distressed, looked like she wasn't feeling well, and told me she's the next door neighbor, and that she forgot her keys at home and has no place to stay until her husband comes back. She also told me that she's dizzy and not feeling well. I felt very conflicted. On one hand, I didn't know this woman and wasn't sure if she was telling me the truth about being my sister's neighbor, so I didn't think letting her in was an option. I called my sister many times to ask permission to let this woman in, but she didn't pick up. On the other hand, I didn't feel comfortable leaving her in that state outside in the cold. I tried calling my parents too, but they didn't pick up. I was basically left to decide on my own. I brought out a chair to the porch and told her she can sit there and wait for her husband if she'd like. I also offered for her some water and food, but she politely declined and decided to wait outside her house. She proceeded to wait 2 hours until her husband came back, and I saw her crying at some point. I felt so bad, but I felt like my hands are tied. I tried calling my sister and parents many times, but no one picked up. When my sister came home later that night, I told her what had happened, and she lashed out at me, calling me an idiot, and saying when she told me not to allow strangers in, she didn't think that she needed to tell me her 7-month pregnant neighbor in distress was an exception to the rule. My parents also later reprimanded me on taking everything so literally and being an idiot. Am I the jerk? Update. Since everyone is asking why didn't she go to another neighbor, while I'm not sure why exactly, I'm gonna explain the layout of the house in my sister's neighborhood a bit. So basically there are 3 houses that are close to each other. My sister's, the pregnant woman's, and another house. There are more houses down the road, but they're kind of far behind. Within walking distance, but she wouldn't be able to see her husband pull up from there, I think. Maybe that's why. I don't know, but it is possible that she went to the other houses near us and got turned down before she came to me. I didn't ask her. Not the jerk. And I'd tell your sister that if she's not going to answer her phone when you're responsible for her kids, you will not be watching them again. Not the jerk. Unless it was freezing cold or super hot, giving her a chair and offering water so she can wait outside is all you needed to do for the neighbor. Your sister absolutely should have answered her phone though, while you were watching her kids. That's not okay. I would not watch them again. Okay, first of all, who doesn't answer the calls from the person watching their kids? That's disturbing. Yikes. You're not an idiot for following rules given to you about someone else's home. That's insane. Never babysit for your sister again. Not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. You can never be too safe this day and age. I don't blame OP one bit. Downstairs neighbor demands we walk normal, so we do, and she hates it. We've been living in this apartment for 3 years. It's old, it's cozy. The building is around 20 years old, and though the appliances and wall paint and carpets have been replaced, the floor has not. It's painfully thin. Every step we take creaks and groans, and it's annoying. Living on the 3rd floor, we know it's gotta be even more so for whoever lives below us. So we've done our best to be mindful of their comfort and try not to make too much noise. We had a new downstairs neighbor move in a couple months ago, and she is not convinced that we are literally tiptoeing around our apartment. Every time I get home and close my door, she's banging on my floor with a broom or something. Every time I cross the living room, banging. Every time I vacuum, banging. Every time my dog chews on a bone, she bangs on the dang floor, and it scares my poor dog. We've been living on eggshells trying to be courteous, but she's driving us mad with her insistent banging every time we take a step. I guess she had finally had enough because she came upstairs to yell at us the other day. "You are too loud. You need to be courteous and walk normal. You have neighbors," she yells. She almost looked like she was going to cry. It was disturbing. We felt bad. My husband tried to explain that, "Ma'am, we do our best to be quiet, but these floors are really old and they creak. We're not stomping or jumping or running, we're living, but we'll continue to be considerate." She was not impressed with his answer and continued to argue. "Well, I lived on a 1st floor before, and my other neighbors weren't loud like you. It's so loud, and my job is so stressful, so I just want you to stop stomping. I don't want to be a mean person, but I really think that you're too loud." So, you know what we agreed to? To walk like normal people. Okay, we'll walk normally, we said. This is exactly what we had been doing, nothing different. So she still bangs on the floor and gives us dirty looks. But we're being normal people who walk normal and don't stop around. Our dog is a normal dog who chews on bones and walks from his bed to his food bowl and gets excited when it's time for walkies. We are so normal. We'll be moving in the next month, so it's no skin off my back. Hope the next tenant doesn't have kids. Or maybe I do. And then she'll finally understand that we are normal people who walk normal. Maybe she'll miss us. The Platinum Blonde and the Green Hairspray. So my family owns a costume store, and as a teenager, I of course helped run it. Now, having grown up in this place, I actually knew way more about makeup than any teen boys usually do. It's a Friday afternoon in October. People are coming through getting their Halloween costumes and makeup. I'm answering the phone and running around helping people find things after getting out of school when in walks, well, picture an old barfly of a woman with way too much plastic surgery and the most bleached platinum blonde hair you can imagine, carrying an expensive purse. I'm sure the image you have in your head is kinder than what she actually looked like, but we'll have to work with what we've got. So she's picking out her stuff and asks if we have colored hairspray. "Yes, ma'am, it's right over here, but I wouldn't recommend it for—" "I don't need some boy telling me how to do my makeup. I know what I'm doing. Just give me that." And she grabs the can of green hairspray I was holding out of my hand. "Okay, great. I was about to tell you this hairspray will stain, but you said you know what you're doing. Yes, have a nice day, ma'am." Fast forward to the evening of the following Monday, and here comes the Platinum Blonde, only now her hair is absolutely mint green. She launches into an absolute fit over how she had washed her hair 3 whole times and it still wasn't coming out. She points me out, saying how I'm responsible for all of this. I mentioned this was a family business, right? The manager she was screaming to was my mother, who also happened to have been up front running the register the previous Friday and had heard the entire exchange. "Well, ma'am, as my son tried to tell you on Friday, this brand of colored hairspray is known to cause stains if your hair is damaged or overtreated. You said you were aware of how it worked and to just let you have it, so we did." See, folks, normally hair that is healthy has these little flaps that lay down. It's why your hair is slick if you run a finger down it one way, but rougher if you run up the other way. If you bleach your hair and treat it badly, these little flaps curl up, meaning any kind of dye you put on them absolutely sinks in and will not come out. Normal, permanent hair dye has got nothing on what happens when you try to put what is basically colored varnish in messed up hair, and her hair was bleached white, not silver, but sheet of notebook paper white. Don't know if it ever came out, but to this day it gives me warm fuzzies just thinking about how I hope she tried to fix it with more bleaching and watched her long hair dissolve. Am I the jerk for not including my kids in a tradition? I, 40s male, get Chinese takeout most every Friday night with my wife, who's also in her 40s. It's her favorite food, and the tradition started when we were first dating. It continues to this day as a way for us to make time and appreciate the little things with one another. We usually order after our two younger ones, who are 7 and 10, are asleep. Our oldest is 14 and does his own thing most of the time on weekend nights, usually staying in his room. It isn't a secret that we do this. We often have a few leftovers, usually a few dumplings or crab rangoon, that we let the kids snack on. Lately, my kids have asked to get Chinese with us. Every once in a while, we'll order for them as well as a treat. However, they're requesting that they be included every time. It's an extra $15 to $20 a week for our kids to eat, so that's why it's an occasion for them. Plus, I enjoy having a special night with just my wife. Chinese takeout also isn't the healthiest food, and I would rather not have my kids eating it regularly, even though I do. They are well fed every other night of the week, and their grandparents take them out to eat when they spend the night, usually once or twice a month. My parents like having our kids over, so it's not like they never ever eat at restaurants. When my oldest asked and the other two expressed their desire to join in, I explained that this is something special between their mom and I. It's like a date for us. They whined a bit, so I offered a compromise. We will include them more often, once a month rather than every few months. That way, they still get to be included and we still have our tradition. They objected, but I reminded them that this is a compromise and I don't have to include them at all. They then accepted the deal and got included tonight. My wife thinks I'm being a bit harsh, that it isn't that much extra to include them. I said it isn't necessarily about the cost, but the fact that I enjoy having time that's just her and I. She still thinks we should just include our kids. Am I the jerk? Mostly not the jerk. This is a date. Your relationship as mothers and fathers is very different from the relationship as partners, and it's important to make time for both of these kinds of relationships. I think your compromise to include the kids once a month is a great one, but it's probably horrible that this happens in the house and they are barred from participation. That is exclusionary and rude. A date is private, and you need to make more of an effort to make it so now that your kids are aging and staying up later. Not the jerk, and I think that the tradition is so wonderful. My marriage ended for many reasons, but one thing that I really struggled with was that my husband made everything about the kids. It could have been my birthday, but the restaurant we'd end up at would be what the kids wanted, with the pressure from my now ex to always cater to them. We didn't do date nights or have anything just for us. I wished he would have modeled for them that our marriage mattered, or even that I did. I learned, and now model to my teens, that it's okay to be selfish at times. As long as you have special traditions and fun things with the kids, and I assume you do, it's more than okay to keep this just for you and your wife. I think you're the jerk because of the frequency. If this takeout routine was happening monthly instead of weekly, it would be actually more of a special treat and something you could more easily justify. But every single week, you're ordering delicious food that I'm sure they can smell into the house and not allowing your kids to have any unless you happen to have a dumpling left over? That feels rude to me. Plus, your kids are getting older and going to bed later. Are you going to eat dinner at 10 p.m. every Friday next year so your tween and teen can't see and smell the food arriving? It's great that you have one-on-one time with your wife every week, but if your kids ask to be included in the food order, you should let them. You don't have to eat it at the same time, but if the adults get a weekly special treat, the kids should be able to as well. Soft, you're the jerk. You should get takeout for the whole family or no one. Your kids can eat it separately watching a movie or something. That will be their sibling night. Meanwhile, you and your wife can sit together, light candles, and make it a date night where kids don't disturb you because they're busy too. Yes, it's spending a bit more, but ultimately a win-win for all. You're the jerk. Date night at home while excluding your kids is not a thing for a reason. You can't eat a special meal in front of your kids and tell them they can't have any or participate. That's just basically a punishment at that point. Just go out to a restaurant and have a real date night or get takeout for everyone. Also, telling them, I can eat this unhealthy food, but you can't eat it because it's unhealthy is not good logic. Kids learn a lot more from your actions than your words. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his kids? Please let us know. Dude, if my parents had gotten Chinese food when I had to go to sleep and I was in my bed smelling that good food, I'd be messed up, man. I'd be sitting here pretending to talk to myself with two different characters. Am I the jerk for giving my husband my honest opinion after he asked? My husband and I, 42 female and 39 male, recently passed through his hometown, and so we made a trip by his childhood house to show me where he grew up. He was ecstatic to find that the Chinese takeout/fish and chip shop that his mom got for him each Friday as a kid was still open 20 years later. Even though we were on a diet, I decided to indulge him and go there for a nostalgic dinner. Big mistake. After spending half an hour talking to the elderly owner about how I used to go there as a kid, without consideration for me just standing there waiting, he ordered half the menu. Fish and chips, lemon chicken, sweet and sour pork, chicken fried rice. His excuse being we could save leftovers for the next few days, even though he knows we're on a diet. When we finally got home to eat, he asked me what I thought. I'm someone that speaks how I feel. He knows this, so I was honest. It was terrible. The chips were too salty and not crispy enough. Fried rice skimped on the meat. Sweet and sour pork didn't feel authentic, among other things. I'm confident if not for my husband's nostalgic glasses, he would say the same. My husband is acting like I personally insulted his late mother, as if I was supposed to lie and pretend to like a disgusting meal he didn't even make. I stand by my comments 100%, but want to know if I am the jerk here, or if my husband just needs to man up a bit. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You didn't have to rag on it. You could have just said it wasn't your style. You're the jerk. Your husband wanted to take you on a trip down memory lane to a place that was important to him as a kid. All you had to do was say something like, "I'm so glad you're enjoying it, and thank you for sharing this with me." You were on a diet? Big whoop. It's one evening and a one-off event. Too many people use phrases like, "I'm someone that speaks how I feel," to justify being a jerk. Apologize to your husband for your gross insensitivity. What would authentic sweet and sour pork entail? You're the jerk. How dare he spends a few minutes speaking to an old acquaintance? How dare he want to relive good childhood memories? You don't have to lie. You can say something like, "It's not for me, but that works out because there's more for you to enjoy." It's obviously not near enough to where you live for it to become a frequent driving option. So it's not like being polite would result in you having to endure food you don't like all of the time. But hey, congratulations on giving him a crappy memory to put in the box with all of the good ones he had. Update. No longer cooking for my girlfriend. Wednesday, after I served the plates, my girlfriend said she didn't want pasta and was going to make a salad. I was pretty sure she was going to do this, and it didn't bother me. I waited for her to come back to start eating, and when she sat down, I tried to talk to her about her day. She asked if I was trying to make a point. I asked what she meant. She asked if I cared that she wasn't going to eat what I made. I said that I didn't and would have it for lunch. She got frustrated, focused on her salad, and wouldn't engage with me. After dinner, I said we shouldn't make dinner for each other anymore. She asked why I thought that, and I said it's clear that she gets upset when she makes food for someone and they don't eat it. It would be better for us just to make separate meals so we each know we will get what we want and no one's feelings would be hurt. She said it wasn't okay for me to make a unilateral decision about our relationship. I said that I wasn't, but I didn't want to cook for her anymore or have her cook for me if it was going to make her upset. We kind of went round and round on it until the conversation petered out. She texted me at work Thursday that she was going to make salmon. I decided that if she tried to cook for me, I would just let her so she'd feel like she won one over on me and we'd draw a line under this. She ended up making salmon only for herself, which I was surprised by because I was expecting her to try to convince me to have some. I made myself a quick omelet and sat down with her. She asked if I was upset she didn't cook for me, and I said no. Again, she accused me of making a point. She asked if I was going to cook for her on Friday, and I said no. She was put out. Friday, she was upset that I made only enough curry for one person and called me greedy. At this point, I'm over it all, so I just ignored her. Why do people stay in relationships with people they're so miserable with? Sometimes we'll stay with people even though they have horrible attitudes because they can make up for it in other parts of our relationship. This is stupid, man. Just put your ego aside and hash it out. It's not worth deteriorating a relationship over. You can stick to your guns. You'll lose the relationship, but if it's really worth it to you, keep doing what you're doing. But you do realize this isn't about food at all, right? You hurt her feelings and showed zero remorse. She's trying to repeat your actions to you so that you can empathize with where she's coming from. Instead, you're choosing to go out of your way to keep making separate meals so you can pretend those feelings weren't valid. And you were rude. You should have apologized. Couples share meals. Maybe not every meal, but most when they're in the same location. So you can keep stubbornly making separate meals, which is obviously not what she wants, but you won't stay a couple. Mostly because it emphasizes on a daily basis how little you care about her feelings. But hey, you do you. My wife demands I buy her boyfriend a plane ticket. My 40 male wife, who's 34 female, and I have been separated for almost 2 years. It's long to explain all the details, but during lockdown, she realized she wasn't happy about her life as a housewife and she wanted to do more stuff before becoming too old. I met her when she was in college, and we've been together for a long time. We are not getting a divorce, and she says everything is going to come back to normal eventually once she feels that she's ready to move on from this new stage of her life. She now lives traveling across Europe, doing different ways of charity work and environmental activism. She has had many small jobs during her travels, mainly as a waitress, but I also still help her a lot. Our marriage is now open in many ways. I haven't been with any other women yet, but I may do it if I find the right one. At first, she was just with random men, but she eventually started having more stable relationships. She's been with her current Greek boyfriend for 6 months. The issue is that she was meant to come home for a few days so she could be at our daughter's 13th birthday. I had already bought her a plane ticket, but then she decided she wanted her boyfriend to come too. I have no problem with him coming, but I didn't think I should be the one paying for his ticket, especially so late because it would be more expensive. As soon as I complained, she just said that she's not coming anymore because she doesn't think that I could be mature enough to handle the situation, and she prefers for me to send our daughter to visit her for a few weeks during summer. I tried to negotiate with her, but she was fully set in her new idea and didn't care about anything I had to say. Now my daughter's angry at me because she really was looking forward to seeing her mom, and because of me, she will have to wait for months. I don't think it's fair to blame me, and I feel that it's cruel that my daughter is now being so cold with me. I also miss my wife, and I'm sad she's not coming. But my daughter thinks this is something I did on purpose because I'm jealous of her new boyfriend. I don't think that that's true, but I do feel guilty because my complaints were the thing that started this whole conflict, and now I've damaged my daughter's enjoyment of her birthday. Am I the jerk? First, get a lawyer, then a therapist. Your marriage is over, and your wife is a manipulator. Stop waiting for her, and don't let your daughter put this on you. This is all on your wife. How dare she expect you to pay for her boyfriend's plane ticket? I wanted to throw up when I read this. Also, your wife is manipulating your daughter. Tell your daughter if her mom wanted to be there for her birthday, she would come alone. That you will not be disrespected in your own home or pay for her boyfriend's plane ticket. It may be harsh, but your wife is damaging your relationship with your daughter. If she cared about your daughter, she wouldn't have left. Not the jerk. Tell your daughter that her mom has a ticket, and if she chooses not to use it to see her daughter on her birthday, then you can't make her use it. Tell your daughter you're sorry if this is what happens. Dude, your marriage is over. You and your daughter have been abandoned. I'm so sorry. Get a lawyer. Get a therapist. Not the jerk, except to yourself. Not the jerk. Your wife is being immature, and she's picking someone she's known for 6 months over her 13-year-old daughter. If he really had to be there, she can buy his ticket. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his ex? Please let us know. Maybe I need to discover who I really am. Maybe I should find a new boyfriend. What you think about that, Reddit boy? If it gets me a break from you, I'm all for it. What? Cancel the service? You bet. I work in roadside assistance as a third party for a lot of insurance companies. Like most customer service jobs, we get a lot of mistreatment. But most of it comes from long wait times and or not being fully covered. This happens often, but I very rarely am in the position where I get to see the fallout. Recently, I had a woman call in. She was completely pleasant, but in a huge rush, so she was a little snippy. No worries, I get it. But then it comes to letting her know that she is not covered for assistance and she has a huge out-of-pocket expense. She whines about the fact that she knows she has roadside assistance. Then that she supposedly set the service up earlier, so not only am I trying to charge her, but it's taking too long, and therefore the price should be waived. Finally, she gives up and tells me I'm useless and says, "Just cancel it," and hangs up. Being the good rep that I am, I call her back to confirm the disconnect was intentional. She picks up, then hangs up immediately, then sends me to voicemail on follow-up calls. So, as instructed, I canceled the job request. I should note, intake doesn't take long, but it's annoying to go over, and if the customer doesn't know their exact location, like being on a freeway, it can take some time. A few hours later, I get a new call from an angry customer wondering where her service is at. I apologize for the frustration, ask for her reference number, and inform her that unfortunately, there isn't any service in the system. She starts going off. I do my best to calm her down and extract the needed information. Halfway through the call, I realize it's the same angry woman as before. When we start going over location, I remember the drop-off location, and she gets excited and says, "Oh, you found my service? Is the driver on his way? It's ridiculous that it's taking this long. You should get this prioritized or expedited." To which I reply in my nicest customer service voice, "No, ma'am, your service isn't in the system. I remember when we spoke earlier. As you requested, I canceled the job at that time, so it's only getting open now and the amount will be this much." Her, "That's more than it was earlier." Me, "Yes, the pricing changes throughout the day to continuously match the market, stay competitive, and incentivize drivers to continue taking jobs at unpopular times." She doesn't say anything. Me, "Also, we have a longer ETA at this time, so you will want to get this payment taken care of ASAP so we can find a service provider to avoid a longer wait. I can send a text message to you to complete the payment." She stutters. But I never told you to cancel it before." Me, starting to lose patience. "Ma'am, our calls are recorded. I notate obsessively, and I called you back multiple times trying to confirm." "I want to speak to your supervisor." Ranting, trying to make me scared. Me, "No problem, one moment. It looks like there's currently a 20-minute wait for a supervisor. I'm happy to wait with you." Her, "Fine then, get my service started." Me, "Certainly, I'll send the text for payment." She finally broke down and paid it and gave up waiting for a supervisor. She lost it up and down that she was going to report me. Either way, I felt vindicated with my tiny bit of malicious compliance. Am I the jerk for walking away from my wife and kids at Costco? So today, I, my wife, and the kids went to Costco for some shopping. While we were strolling through the aisles, we got to the refrigerator section and my wife picked a pack of yogurt drinks. My little one, almost 2, saw the yogurt drinks and raised her hand as if she was asking for some, to which my wife said that she was going to take one out and give it to her. My son, who's 4, saw this and asked for one too, which my wife proceeded to do. The second I saw her do this, I told her to stop and not give them the drinks as we hadn't paid for them yet. She said no, it was okay as we were going to pay for them anyway, and I replied that if she does this, I'm going to leave her with the kids there as it was really embarrassing in case someone called us out. She didn't listen to me and did what she said she would. So I walked away from her, leaving her with the kids and started looking at other things. Moments later, she called me saying that I should go back as the kids had finished their drinks. I was mad, but I know how my kids are, so I ended up going back. When I went back, we apologized to each other and kept going with our day. Now we are home and she's acting rude to me and just told me that she thinks I don't care about her at all and that I treat her like crap, all on the base of what happened earlier. So, am I the jerk for doing what I did, even though I gave her a fair warning? Couple reasons why I think I was right in doing what I did. 1. As far as I know, it's illegal to open merchandise without paying for it, even though you're still at the store. It's also trashy and embarrassing to do that if people notice you do it. 2. My kids are not easygoing, as in they don't take the word no easily. But I have been pretty good at teaching them their limits. Giving them stuff this easily only makes their problem worse. However, my kids do understand that you can't open anything in the store unless you're back at home or in our car. I don't want them to think it's normal to just open and use store merchandise. You're the jerk. I used to work at Costco. Nobody cares as long as you pay for it before you leave. Can't tell you how many times we had folks arrive at checkout with items they had already opened and were snacking on. I think you're overthinking it. You are way too concerned with what some strangers at Costco might think of you, and due to that unnecessary anxiety of coming off as trashy or whatever, you're being a jerk to your wife and making a big deal over nothing. As a former Costco employee, I second this. As long as you pay for the item, you're good. But the way OP reacted towards his wife and kids, I don't know, man. Definitely, you're the jerk. Couldn't this thread be a learning experience and going forward, he knows? But for the incident about which OP wrote, it sounded like he was trying to follow the rules and teach boundaries. I say no jerks here. My son's father worried entirely too much what randoms in the store thought of us. It's a red flag to me. Worried about what randoms in a store think and being worried about being accused of shoplifting are not really the same thing. So you think that your wife is trashy and embarrassing? Those are your words, not mine. So that must be what you think of her. Your kids are 2 and 4. They don't understand legality and didn't know it was wrong. And you're super rude for abandoning your wife and kids in the middle of the store. Also, you're incredibly passive-aggressive, which is so annoying. Why don't you learn to communicate like a normal human being instead of getting huffy and walking off? I think she should just put you in timeout now that you're back home, since you're not enough of an adult in your relationship to actually talk about your feelings instead of just pouting and walking off. Next time, you should just throw yourself on the floor in the middle of Costco. Don't forget to cry and scream about how much you're not getting what you want. You clearly haven't learned to use your words yet. You're the jerk. Everyone sucks here. Perhaps the kids don't take no easily because they're not told no in situations where they should be, like at Costco. Your wife shouldn't have done that, especially if it made you that uncomfortable. And you shouldn't have just taken off. They're your kids too, and if they're really that difficult, you get to stay and help manage them. Edit. I'm not saying it would have been the end of the world to let the kids eat at Costco. The point is that they clearly don't hear no often enough if they turn into nightmares every time they do, as OP insinuates. Also, mother of 3 here. I understand the struggle. I don't understand this mentality everyone has that he's a jerk, because I'm the opposite. I absolutely hate it when people do this, because how do you know that you'll be able to pay for it? Even if you have money in your account, I've had issues with bank cards not working and having to leave a store empty-handed to go call my bank and deal with them. Not to mention, I think it's stealing and just plain wrong to do so, because there is no guarantee that you will pay for it. I've worked in Walmart, and I've seen so many packs of things opened or only one taken out of it. I feel until you've scanned and paid for it, it shouldn't be opened, but that's my opinion. The thing I think maybe you could be the jerk for is leaving her in the middle of the store alone with your 2 kids. I have very bad social anxiety, so when my mom has done things like this, I leave as well, so I can understand not wanting to be around when it's happening. And for the people talking about kids and being hungry while shopping, that's why you feed them before you go, or you bring your own snacks with you for them. Or the other option is one parent goes to the store with a list and the kids stay with the other parent at home. I say parent because it should be a switch off of who's staying and who's going. As someone who works in retail, I can say that we all judge you, and it's always annoying when people do this. Not the jerk. OP is right to feel embarrassed and walk away from his wife. Those kids gotta learn some self-control, and tough love sucks. Sometimes, but it's needed. Your wife is in the wrong. Not the jerk. Unpopular opinion here from reading the comments, but growing up, I was told to never open up anything from the store while in the store, especially before paying. I have worked retail and always cringe when moms hand me off half-eaten or empty wrappers of food that they let their kids eat while shopping. I would never partake in this, and if I ever have kids, I will not give them any snacks or drinks that they have before paying for them. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Moms who let their kids eat stuff in the store that they haven't paid for are Karens, and the kids are entitled kids. Don't at me, brah. OP's in the right. I feel bad for the guy. Don't worry, OP. I know what it feels like to be married to someone who doesn't have an ounce of common sense. And I know what it's like to be married to a Karen. I'm just glad we never had any kids that she got to corrupt. What did you say? I said it's a shame we never had any kids we got to bring up. Am I the jerk for asking my sister to immediately pick up her son? I, 29 female, have a daughter who is 4, Anna. Her father is not in the picture, and I'm raising her with the help of my grandma. To be clear, me and Anna live in her house, and I help her around the house and with bills, and she looks after Anna while I'm working. About a month ago, Anna had a very complicated operation. This is for a condition she has had since she was born. An operation essentially saved her life. However, I had to borrow money from family, including my sister, to make sure the operation would go ahead, and I'm paying it back slowly. The operation has a long recovery period, and the doctor said it might take up to 6 months for her to be back to normal. Due to this, Anna gets tired really quickly, especially after active playtime. Because she's recovering, she can take naps and sleep as much as she needs to. I've also made sure to break the main meals into 6 to 8 smaller meals so it's easier to eat, as recently she found eating boring because it takes too long. She has friends visiting her, and the rule with them and their parents is that if Anna gets tired, they move into less active activities, like watching a cartoon or reading, which they can understand and have been complying with without issues. Thursday, my sister came around with her son and asked me to look after him for a bit as something came up at work. She knows about Anna's recovery and needing rest and assured me it was for an hour or two. My nephew, Kyle, is 5, and as soon as he got into the house, he wanted to play with Anna. My grandma wasn't home as she had to visit a friend, so I was looking after them. After about an hour, Anna has mentioned that she was tired and wanted to watch some cartoons on Disney, but Kyle still wanted to play and didn't want to watch girly cartoons. He wanted to keep playing. I've told Anna that she can go to her room and watch it there, and I will look after Kyle, but he didn't want to let go of Anna and kept insisting she must play with him since his mummy paid us. That didn't sit well with me, and he was throwing a tantrum, refusing to accept that Anna needs rest. So I called my sister and told her to pick up Kyle immediately. My sister did show up, but she wasn't happy and called me a jerk since she was in an important meeting, and I could have sucked it up since she did loan me money for Anna's operation, so it is the least I could have done. After this, I've asked her to leave. Later that day, I received a call from my mom saying I was a jerk too, and I shouldn't have asked my sister to pick up Kyle since it's just her looking after him, as Kyle's dad is in the military and is currently away. Edit. As a lot of people seem to be missing out, Kyle latched on to Anna and wouldn't let go of her. He was holding her, making her unable to rest until she carries on playing with him, making her really stressed out. I've tried to take her away from him and take her to her room, but he would not let go of her at all. And I didn't want to risk him hurting her since her scars from operation are still fresh and only recently started to heal properly. Not the jerk, but you definitely need to have a talk with your sister. Your nephew didn't just come up with that on his own. Not the jerk. Kyle should have been clearly instructed by his mother that as soon as Anna gets tired, then you watch cartoons or hang out with your aunt. The words, "my mom paid you," have been repeated and enforced by his mother. What a terrible thing to teach a 5-year-old, that his cousin has zero autonomy because mummy paid them. That's just terrible. Am I the jerk for causing my coworker to lose a $500 tip? I'm currently in my senior year of college. I'm working a serving job at a mid-level restaurant. Bill typically $100 for drinks, food, appetizers, and dessert for 2 people. I've been working here for 10 months. My parents usually come in every Friday with my uncle and aunt. They're usually set in my section and they tip me extremely well. $200 bill, $100 tip, just because they're my family. My manager has no issue with this as I do not give them extras or more attention. I just treat them like a normal customer. He's aware of the tip and my parents will usually order drinks at the bar and tip the bartender as well, so they spend a lot here. He knows them and talks with them when they're here because he appreciates their business. Unfortunately, my manager is out because his wife is sick, so he's on leave for 6 months. We have a temporary manager named Barb. Barb is very strict and follows the rules. Barb has been here for 2 weeks and has seen my parents twice, and she asked me the second time. When I told her it was my parents, she made a weird face. I should also note I have a coworker named Tina who hates that I serve my parents and I get a huge tip. She was always complaining to my old manager, but he never cared. Cut to last Friday, my parents come in. This was essentially my cousin's engagement dinner and also my birthday is soon, so I knew that they were planning on leaving me a huge tip as a present. I haven't seen my cousin or my grandpa in a while, and they were all excited to be served by me. I was talking about this all week and talking about how I knew I was getting a $500 tip because it's my birthday soon. The hostesses know them as well and goes to sit them in my section. Barb immediately intercepts this and tells the hostess to sit them in Tina's section. Not only was this my parents, but my aunt and uncle, cousin and her boyfriend, and my grandpa. I ask Barb if I can serve my family, and she says she's sick of me being unprofessional and I'm hogging the tips away from the other servers who deserve it as well. Tina sees this and is very happy. My family gets sat in her section. However, my dad asks if I can serve them, but Barb says, OP has some other responsibilities to tend to and won't be able to give you her full attention. My parents are confused and I shrug behind my manager. My mom goes to find me halfway into their meal, and I tell her what happened. Cut to the end. Their bill is around $350, and Tina is left a $65 tip. My parents leave, and after the restaurant closes, Tina corners me and screams at me that I cost her $500. Barb steps in and accuses me of telling my parents not to tip Tina. I try to explain this was a present, and Barb scoffs and calls me a liar. I left, and I don't work until tomorrow. I feel like a jerk because I bet she was really excited to get the huge tip. I'm afraid to go back in as people have been talking about it. Am I the jerk? Weird question. How come your family can't give you the $500 out of work? While you are not the jerk, you were kind of bragging that was your upcoming tip, and obviously Tina wanted that tip. She still got tipped well, but not the $500. Keep those money comments to yourself unless you want to be stuck in an uneasy situation like this. Before I forget, Tina and temp manager were probably in on it because I find it funny she intercepted the day they came in. Going against the grain to say everyone sucks. It's absolutely not your fault Tina didn't get $500. That makes sense. It's also not your family's responsibility to tip a stranger that kind of money or to follow through on something she wrongly assumed she was entitled to. Tina and Barb are delusional. That said, you shouldn't have bragged about your good fortune at work. Everyone there is trying to make a living. To be honest, your family using your workplace to give you a present isn't the best idea to begin with. Those kinds of things are better done in private. She's a jerk for getting it into her head that she would be treated the same as you, their own kid. You're a jerk for bragging about a large public tip that your family should have extended to you privately as a gift in the first place. Am I the jerk for not thanking my wife for my breakfast in bed birthday present? My wife, who's 41 female, and I, 40 male, have 2 teenage kids together. Both work full-time, comparable hours, but I cook all of the meals while we otherwise split the housework 50-50. Wife doesn't cook because she doesn't know how to, but every time I offer to teach her or ask for help, she'll come up with excuses like being tired. Been this way coming on 20 years. Today I turned 40 and my wife's present was making me breakfast in bed. This consisted of toast, 2 eggs, and a strip of bacon, also an instant coffee. We have an actual coffee machine that does cappuccinos, etc., but wife doesn't know how to use it. I don't normally think of presents as transactional, but I was really disappointed as it's something I do for her literally every day of the year, and for my birthday, she just put in minimal effort to make a standard breakfast. Turns out she had our daughter cook the bacon and eggs for her as well anyway. She only actually made the coffee. Told my wife it was a little disappointing as cooking for me occasionally is something she should be doing normally anyway. She took this really badly and isn't speaking to me at the moment, and said she put a lot of thought into it since I'm always asking her to learn to cook. For comparison, on her last birthday, I surprised her by flying her sisters down to spend it with her, alongside with a nice pair of earrings. Maybe I am being a bit selfish or childish for complaining about a present. Am I the jerk? Everyone sucks here. I hate reading about people whining when another person makes some sort of an attempt to be kind. It's just like, eat your breakfast and shut up. I doubt anyone forced you to pay for plane tickets and jewelry. Not the jerk. I'm having a really hard time here. On the one hand, you took what was a nice gesture and used it to criticize your wife instead. I'm also not a big fan of comparing couples' gifts because it's not a competition, it's an expression of thoughtfulness. This was thoughtful, but I think your complaints are valid. I'd feel differently if she had actually done the cooking, but having your daughter do it means she couldn't even be bothered to learn some of the most basic cooking. It doesn't feel like a special treat when it's something you do for her every day. She felt like her gesture is being taken for granted, but that's how you feel every day that she refuses to share the cooking responsibilities. Everyone sucks here. You allowed this pattern to happen over the course of 20 years now. Why are you surprised that she's 41 and can't cook? This is not a one-time off, and she gave a poor gift. You've enabled this behavior for decades. I'd be upset if that's all my boyfriend did, but we go big for birthdays. Either way, I'd think it was a nice gesture and be very surprised and happy upon seeing it. So you're the jerk for not even thanking her immediately when she came in. You didn't know all those details about instant coffee and daughter making it. You're taking those into account how to validate yourself. I'm assuming this has something other than to do with breakfast in bed. Wow, entitled much? I'd give anything for my wife to make me breakfast in bed for my birthday. She usually doesn't even spend my birthday with me since she's always so busy with her friends. I do 99% of the cooking for myself and the kids since it works better for our schedules. We have an open relationship, so my wife isn't home often, but when she is home, I make sure to treat her like the queen that she is. And please don't insult my relationship. I literally went no contact with pretty much everyone in my family because they didn't approve of my wife and I's relationship. But if it were up to them, I'd have ended up being a toxic, controlling jerk like my dad was. I've always tried to be the opposite of him, and I will raise my sons to be the exact same as myself, loving, open, and accepting. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for banning my sister's boyfriend from our apartment? Please help, because I really feel like I'm being made out to be crazy. I, 27 female, share an apartment with my sister, 19 female. Let me preface this by saying that I am the only one on our lease, since she's not old enough. Our complex says you have to be 21, so right now she pays less than half the rent in exchange to stay here, which is around $400 out of $955. She doesn't pay for anything else, bills, utilities, etc. 2 weeks ago, after having an argument with our mother and I over not helping pay for other utilities, cleaning up messes, generally being a not great roommate, my sister left the apartment and went to visit her boyfriend, 19 male, at the bakery where he works. He and I have had disagreements in the past about him smoking, not tobacco, in our apartment, which puts me at risk for eviction, and over him leaving messes and trash around when he comes to visit, where he normally stays for a few days at a time. After this disagreement, however, I received a text from him after midnight telling me that I needed to call him to talk. I didn't answer because I was upset myself, and I'm not one to be confrontational, especially when I'm not calm. He arrives at my apartment with my sister. It was after 1 a.m. at this point. I was in bed, lights off, in pajamas, when he began pounding on my door. Before I even answered, he opened it and was in my room, yelling at me about letting my mom come between me and my sister. I was already shaken at this point. My door doesn't lock, so I was already very caught off guard, and I was scared. I told him that it was something between my mom, my sister, and myself, not him. He stormed into my room and tossed his key that my sister had given to him into my nightstand, told me to have a nice life, and slammed my door shut again before I could even answer. I told my sister I didn't feel comfortable with him coming to our apartment anymore. It's been a week, and she and I just had our first fight about it tonight. I held my ground and said I didn't want him over. She says I'm irrational and being selfish, and that I'm destroying her mental health by banning him. But I really don't feel comfortable, and technically, and legally, it is my apartment. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Do not put your living arrangements at risk for your sister's relationship. Do not expect a 19-year-old to be mature enough to understand the situation. More so, the dude acted aggressively, so he needs to stay away. You are not the maid or their parent to pay the bills. You did more than enough for your sister until now. She's a young adult and does not need to rely on you for financial support or house chores. She can either comply or pack her stuff and move in with the boyfriend so they can be lazy jerks together. Not the jerk. I mean, it's pretty clear-cut. Your sister seems to have a lot to say for someone who seems to barely pay a third of the cost for the place. At least you seem to have your mom on your side. Your sister is being immature, but the red flag is clearly the boyfriend being a loud jerk, defending his girlfriend against the mean big sister in an argument that was barely about him. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my parents with their mortgage, forcing them to lose their home, even though I can easily pay it off? As kids, my parents would buy my two brothers whatever they requested regardless of how expensive it was, allowed them to go on trips with them, and threw them over-the-top birthday parties while I didn't receive any. For example, my brothers got to go to Disney for their birthdays while I stayed with my grandparents. Fortunately, my aunt and grandma took me to Disney a few months later. After being called out, they said they couldn't afford the trip for 5. As we got a little older, my parents had us working in their business after school and weekends. They gave both my brothers allowances for helping out while I didn't receive anything and was expected to do more. I wish it was just financial though. My parents always said very hurtful things. They'd make comments when I entered the room, and honestly, I still don't know what I did wrong. When my brother graduated high school, they gave him an all-inclusive trip around Europe for the summer. When I graduated the next year, I didn't even get a party from them. I think the worst of it being they paid for both my brother's higher education, but then told me to figure it out because they can't afford to pay for 3 college degrees. At 18, I moved in with my grandparents full-time and decided not to go to college because I didn't want to get into debt or put that burden on my grandparents, who offered to pay for some. I did, however, take them up on their offer to financially support me until I had a job. My grandma gifted me about $5,000 after moving in with her to help me start an online business I told her about. Long story short, my online shop blew up and made well over 6 figures my first year. Within 5 years, 2 online shops, and a lot of investing in real estate and stocks, I now make way more money than my parents ever made combined. During lockdown, my parents had to shut down their restaurant and are still struggling to make ends meet. They're also unable to pay for their mortgage and are afraid they'll go homeless if I don't support them. They also have a lot of medical bills after my father got into an accident and needed surgery on his knee. I, being so grateful for everything my grandparents and aunt have done for me, decided to get my grandparents their dream home and paid off my aunt's debts for medical school. After realizing I can easily afford to pay off their debts and mortgage, my parents have been begging me, literal tears, to save their home, but I refused. They told me I'm a jerk, and I deserved my upbringing, and that I shouldn't be punishing my siblings and forcing them out of their homes for the actions of my parents. I'm not punishing my siblings though. I'll be more than happy to support them, especially my baby sister, if she comes and stays with me or my grandparents. Am I the jerk for watching them become homeless? Not the jerk. As soon as you refused, the mask slipped. They told you that you deserved their mistreatment. It's very telling that they are aware of how they mistreated her. They acknowledge they were terrible parents to her by saying that, and yet they still expect her to financially support them. They have some nerve. She owes them nothing, and I'd be sure to tell them so. Edit. Some are asking, how do you know that OP is female? She says in a comment that she's 23 female. That's why I think OP is the product of an affair or something worse. But I'd put money on affair and the parents pretending dad is the dad of all kids. My parents refused to let me have my own bedroom even though we have extra rooms. Me, 14 female, and my twin sister, Kate, and our parents, who are in their 40s, live in a 4-bedroom house. My parents have the master bedroom. The second room is a guest room. Dad uses the third room as an office, and my sister and I share the other room. The 3 regular bedrooms are small. Dad works from home 2 days a week, and we have guests maybe 10 days a year. I'm very outgoing. I like having people over, and Kate's an introvert who wants to watch her old TV shows and talk to her friends on Discord. She likes order, and I like putting my clothes on the chair without being yelled at. We've been asking to have our own room since we were 9, and my parents are refusing to move us because we don't have enough space for everybody's needs. Lockdown was awful. Kate and I fought all the time, and our parents yelled at her when she moved her stuff to the guest room because mom has her craft stuff in the closet, and what if grandma had to stay with us for a while? I love my sister, but this is making me like her less, and sometimes I think she barely tolerates me because we're always in each other's space. We barely fit in here anymore. The closet is too small for our clothes. Kate's books are in stacks on the floor. I can't listen to music in peace, and my friends ask why we are sleeping on bunk beds in a 4-bedroom house. Yesterday, I was looking for my hair curler and caused a book avalanche that knocked the USS Enterprise, whatever, off the desk. Kate was screaming. I was screaming, and she asked for the 1,000th time to combine the guest room and office so she can take the other room. Dad said he absolutely needs an office. I said I absolutely need a closet, and it doesn't make sense to have all this space and put both kids in a single room. Mom said we're not entitled to a bedroom each, and there are millions of kids who share a room, and if we wanted more space, we should get rid of some stuff and stop living like hoarders. Like, we're sorry for being 2 separate people with 2 people's worth of belongings that you bought for us. I asked who is entitled to a room that's empty 346 days per year, or an office that's used 2 days a week, and why I'm the unreasonable one for wanting some space. After that, we were yelling in circles, and Kate took her laptop and locked herself in the guest room. Dad asked what does she think she's doing, and she said, Googling nursing homes with bunk beds, which helped not at all. So, are we the jerks? Today, my aunt and grandma visited and called us ungrateful for everything we have and were disappointed in us. I don't believe I'm a jerk because I'm just asking to use the space we already have, but at the end of the day, it's my parents' house, not mine. Kate and I wouldn't be angry if we lived in a 2-bedroom house, but 4 bedrooms? One room just sitting there being a waste of square feet and taxes? And we have to share? I'm gonna go with not the jerk. Your parents are putting the possibility of needing a whole room for a guest once or twice a year over the very real needs of their daughters who live there 365 days a year. Also, your sister saying she's Googling nursing homes with bunk beds is hilarious. Not the jerk. I do think a dedicated guest room and a dedicated office is a ridiculous waste when the family harmony would be drastically improved by separating the kids. My office is moving to the dining room because I can no longer use my daughter's closet as an office. She needs privacy and personal space. Not the jerk. You have the space. It sounds like your parents only wanted one kid and getting twins was an inconvenience to their room plans, so they just did it anyway. While you have guests, you can share the room for the few days a year and then both have your own room again. I'm going with no jerks here. You want your privacy, but your parents also have the right to decide who lives where in their own home. I do think a good solution would be for one of you to take the guest room and simply share the other bedroom when guests are there. Also, your mom said something about grandma maybe having to stay with you. In that case, the two of you would go back to sharing. Everything is in the approach. Don't whine or get upset. Prove you're growing up by mentioning these ideas and asking what they think. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her parents? Please let us know. Don't quote me here, but I think the dad had a post on Reddit too about the same story. Let's check it out. Am I the jerk for not giving up my home office so my daughter can have her own room? I, 49 male, am the breadwinner of my family. My job requires me to be available at all hours of the day in case of an emergency. My wife, 47 female, has been a stay-at-home mom since our oldest, B, who's 16, female, was born. We have 3 kids, B, who's 16, our daughter, P, who's 15, our other daughter, and C, who's 14, our son. B and P share a bedroom and have since C was born. When my wife and I bought our house, it had an upstairs master and a first-floor master, which we converted into my office. B's birthday was Friday, and she's been asking for her bedroom. B has been begging that we convert the office into her own room so she doesn't have to share a room with her sister and a bathroom with her siblings. My wife has been trying to convince me by saying that we can move my desk to our bedroom since I barely use it. I've been telling her I need the office in case of an emergency, and I want to keep my work separate from the spaces I relax in. B got very upset by this and said I'm denying her privacy and space of her own. I pointed out she does have her own space on her side of the bedroom. I also pointed out that she will be sharing a dorm with someone when she goes to college, so she will have lots of practice. B got very upset by this and said some classic teenager things like I'm ruining her life and she hates me. B also said it's unfair C has his own room. I asked B if she would like to share a room with C instead, and she said no. My wife thinks I'm being selfish and that B and P are growing up and deserve to have their own spaces. My wife keeps telling me I'm being unfair and acting like a jerk. I pointed out she doesn't have a job and doesn't know how important it is I have an office space. I don't think I'm being a jerk, but my wife and daughters insist that I am. My mother agrees with me that I need my own space to work. Am I the jerk? Clarifications. My office was converted to a first-floor master by the previous owners of the house. It was originally a dining room. The room is a similar size to B and P's current bedroom, but a little smaller due to the bathroom. My daughters have a blackout curtain that covers their beds and desks that my wife made when the girls hit middle school. I use the office around 20 to 30 hours a month. I handle legal documents that need to be kept behind a locked door. We don't have a basement. We have an attic, but the only way to access it is through a drop-down ladder in the hallway. Yes, I did ask my mother for her outlook on the situation. My mom doesn't have any input on my relationship or life, but I do occasionally ask her for advice or her opinion on matters. My wife asks her mom for advice all the time, and I have no problem with that. You're the jerk. And your wife thinks you're being selfish, she's correct. Honestly, I feel like you're the jerk just for being an almost 50-year-old man and involving your mommy in this. But really, you barely use the space. Your daughter would use it every day. This is a no-brainer. You're the jerk. He edited out the part about his mommy. I think you're the jerk here for a few reasons. Firstly, keeping an entire room you rarely use just on the off chance you need to take a call is a genuine waste of space. If you needed to use the office all the time during work hours, it would be a different story. But that's not the case. Secondly, on that note, not wanting to have a desk you rarely use in your room, on the off chance you need to have some privacy during a work emergency because you want to keep your workspace separate, that's a bit rich when you're asking about your two teenage, almost adult daughters to share their space 100% of the time. It's a huge double standard. Thirdly, I assume that your two youngest aren't sharing because they're different genders. It's pretty standard for the oldest to get first dibs on a room of their own. So if you can't get past the weird gender segregation, maybe P and C could share for a while. It's a raw deal for P, but if C has never shared, he'll be totally unprepared for college, according to your logic anyway. B has had ample practice. Edit. Please note, last point is largely sarcastic. None of them should be sharing a room. If there's space available, it's inappropriate for any two teenagers to be sharing, regardless of gender. And I don't think even OP buys his BS comment about sharing being good practice for sharing a dorm in college. You're the jerk. 20 to 30 hours a month is 5 to 7 hours a week. You're not only denying your oldest kid some privacy, you're using poor excuses to go along with it. You pointed out that she doesn't have a job and doesn't know how important it is that you have an office space? Oh, get a grip. I work from home 2 to 3 days a week doing engineering support on a computer desk in a breakfast nook. I'm also on call for half of all evenings and weekends, splitting with another engineer. You can keep your precious files locked up in a closet and a working desk somewhere else. You want to keep your workspace separate from the space you relax in? Man has an excuse for everything. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is everyone else? Please let us know. Reddit, home of the most first world problems you'll find anywhere. I didn't have to work overtime? Okay, roger that. I'm a mariner. My position on the ship is mate. Below me are my deckhands who are responsible for the labor work like painting, grinding, maintenance, line handling, cargo ops, etc. Above me is the chief mate, second in command, and the captain, in charge of everyone and responsible individual for the entire ship. We are officers and we do the planning for navigation, ship handling, training, payroll, etc. I work for a private company that pays me by a day rate, which is a 12-hour workday. I work 1 month on and 1 month off. Like most industries, we are undermanned, can't hire enough to fill all positions. Now, the ship I work is even harder to crew up, mainly because of the captain. He's got a notorious reputation for being a jerk, so people find all sorts of ways not to come to this boat. And if they do, they only work 1 tour and never come back. I joined this ship back in May, and for the last 7 months, it's been kind of horrible working for this captain. He's a narcissist, condescends everyone, insults everyone, works us like slaves, never thanks us, just an all-around class act. You know these type of bosses. They never let up. They push you to the limit and just make you hate work and life. With that said, I've been working 15, sometimes 18 hours a day because we're shorthanded. I'm doing all sorts of work that's not in my job description. I had to do cargo ops, handle mooring lines, maintenance, all in addition to my mate duties. I'm a very hard worker, a team player, and I never say no to work. The thing is, we don't get paid for any more than 12 hours of work a day, so all those extra hours I worked are unpaid. It burns me and I hate it, but like I said, I'm a team player. I want to make sure it's safe for my guys, the operations get completed, the clients stay happy, so I do what is asked of me. I'm also the cook. We don't have an official cook on board because this is considered a small crew in a small ship. I was cooking lunch every day for my crew and many dinners too. Generally, you're on your own for breakfast and dinner. I was so good at my job that he and the chief mate passed their duties on to me so they can just sit back and relax. Chief mates and captains have a lot of paperwork to do, but I was handling that for them too until up to this point. Well, one day, I'm just completely burnt out with these 15 to 18-hour days. I get into a discussion about how the captain and company are stealing my wages because I'm working more than 12 hours a day. I asked him if I could show up to watch an hour later than my scheduled duty. The engine department does this when they require their folks to work overtime the day before. I work a swing shift which overlaps both the captain and chief mate, so it's not unheard of or uncommon to let these guys show up late, especially if they work more than 12 hours the previous day. Well, once I asked to sleep in an extra hour, all heck broke loose with him insulting me, calling me names, being horrible. Nobody wants to work anymore, blah blah blah. Just nasty, inappropriate behavior that shouldn't happen, but happens all the time in this industry. He then finishes his verbal beatdown with a grin on his face. "You know, mate, you never had to work overtime. You could have just said no." I was steaming at this point, but I just replied with, "Okay, roger that." I called it a day and went to bed. Cue malicious compliance. The next day, I'm already on watch, and he comes on to work and asks me what's for lunch. "Nothing, I'm not cooking today." "Did you pull out anything from the freezer at least?" "Nope." So nobody had any real food for lunch. They all made sandwiches and ate chips instead. Later that day, "Hey, I need you to go finish painting the rescue boat. The guys are busy with other projects, and I want this done today." "Well, Captain, since it's not in my job description, I respectfully decline." We get into a little arguing, but he concedes. The very next day, he pulls the same thing. "What's for lunch?" "Nothing." "What do we have that we can cook real fast?" "I don't know, Captain. I didn't check. Cooking isn't my job, remember? So I don't plan on doing it." He rushes to cook some whole chickens in an hour, and they came out raw and really ticked off the crew. Nobody touched his food. This routine lasted a whole week until it was the end of my tour and I got to go home. I returned to duty a month later, and he thought I would forget or let it slide. I indeed did not forget or let it slide. For the next entire month-long tour, the captain had to do the cooking because the chief mate and I refused to do it, and he complained because he had to wake up early and prep food. I was already doing all of that when I was cooking. I just didn't complain. I enjoy cooking, but I was willing to die on this hill. I wasn't letting it go. I refused to let him win this battle. I did not cook one meal. To be petty, I made myself delicious food, but did not share it. I refused any work that wasn't in my job description. What's he gonna do? Write me up on disciplinary for not doing someone else's job that isn't mine, or for not working past 12 hours? Not happening. Understand, at this point, I was physically tired, burnt out, and mentally drained from doing everybody's job and taking crap from him. I asked for a transfer to another ship, but got denied, so I'm still stuck on this ship with this captain. But now he knows where I stand, and I haven't cooked or done extra duty since. And that's what you get for taking advantage of a good worker and always insulting me. Edit. I forgot to add that one of the reasons for not getting a transfer is because nobody is easily willing to come here and work with this guy. One day during that hitch, I came up to the bridge and overheard him talking to the assignment manager about keeping me here permanently because he's a good mate, he's prior military, and he can cook. Blah, blah, blah. I was supposed to be a floater, filling in positions on different boats as needed, which is what I like. Well, that worked out well. Am I the jerk for buying my daughter a locked storage bin? I, 53 male, have a daughter who's 17, who I recently bought this big storage container for that locks. The reason being, our daughter has a job and likes buying her own food and snacks for herself. The problem is that her mom invites her aunt, uncle, and cousins over all the time, and ever since she started buying her snacks and leaving them in the pantry, they'd eat them without consulting her. She's asked them many times to not eat them, but they don't listen to her. For reference, she likes to order snacks from other countries as a way to broaden her horizons. She's also linguistically gifted and likes to try and read labels to help expand her vocabulary. These snacks can take weeks to get after she orders them again, and by then, her current snacks are gone. My wife didn't do anything, saying that since our daughter kept them in the pantry, they're for everyone. She moved them to her room, and her cousins would go in when she wasn't there and take them. I went to a hardware store and I bought a big container with a lock, and for extra measure, I bought extra locks and drilled holes so that they could be used. Our daughter cried and thanked me because it was pretty expensive and not something she could afford. Of course, the cousins went to get more snacks and they threw a fit when they saw it and realized the snacks were in there. They told their parents and they told my wife, and she's not happy with me, saying that our daughter should share her snacks with family and she's being selfish and will become overweight. Our daughter is incredibly fit, does multiple sports and exercises all the time. She's far from unhealthy. I told my wife she could order her own, and our daughter was happy to tell her where to order them, but she didn't like that either and told her that the chest needs to go and that I should have consulted with her before buying the bin in the first place. Am I the jerk? Edit. The relatives are our daughter's cousins and aunt and uncle. They are my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and nephews, and sister-in-law is my wife's sister to clear up any confusion. The pantry I also fully stocked with food. No one is going hungry and eating our daughter's snacks because they have to. Your wife is well out of line. How dare she take your daughter's things? Your daughter works for these treats. Your wife has no right to steal them and has no right to advocate her other family members stealing them. You did the right thing. You're not the jerk. Not the jerk. But I would take it a step further and get a deadbolt lock for her room to lock it when she isn't there. That way the cousins can't get into her room and will have something else to complain about. Not the jerk. Your wife sounds like a nightmare with no respect for others. The cousins sound like entitled whiners. They can buy their own snacks if it's that important to them. Congratulations on standing up for and showing respect for your daughter. Am I the jerk for laughing in my friend's face because he said I'm financially mistreating my boyfriend? My boyfriend, Matt, and I have been together for about 10 months now, and he moved in with me about 4 to 5 months ago. I own my flat, and I have a somewhat well-paying job. Matt just went back to school part-time, meanwhile working a lower-paying job. He pays for half the food, utilities, and dates. I like to travel a lot, but Matt can't really afford it, so I mostly go with my friends, but he came with us for a little winter holiday after Christmas. After we got back, one of my friends, David, who was with us too, came to me saying that he wants to talk to me about Matt. David told me that he observed Matt during our vacation, and what I was doing to him really wasn't okay. He saw that Matt was struggling to pay for things, often checking if he had enough money. David eventually said that it's wrong of me to expect Matt to pay for half of everything, since I make so much more than him, and the fair thing would be to divide things based on our income percentage. Like I pay 70% for the things, and Matt only pay 30% instead of 50-50. David told me that I'm not allowing Matt to save any money of his own, trapping him in our relationship, since Matt couldn't afford to live alone, and that's financial mistreatment. I just laughed in David's face. This is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I didn't really try to refute anything he was saying because none of it made any sense. David got really offended, angry, and disappointed, or I don't know what. It was kind of hard to read, and he said he expected better of me. That he came to me with a genuine concern, wanting to be helpful, and he didn't expect my immature reaction to it. It's been a couple of days since this, and I still can't wrap my head around it. I'm thinking maybe I should apologize to David for laughing at him, as he really did look concerned. But what was he even thinking? Am I the jerk? Edit. I did make one point to David after laughing, which was that Matt lives with me for free. I only ask for half the utilities, which is less than 50 euros a month. I, on the other hand, have a pretty big mortgage. To this, David said that Matt lived with his parents before without having to pay rent, so that's irrelevant, and I felt like there wasn't much more to be said. What? You aren't married to him, so you're not liable to financially support him. He's not even paying rent. He's an adult that made a big boy decision to move out of his parents. Now, if he's paying more than he can afford, then accept that he can't afford this lifestyle and needs to move back home. The financial mistreatment accusation was beyond unreasonable. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Sounds like Matt gets to choose his discretionary spending after he pays his way in food, utilities, etc. The cost of living. You're not forcing him to travel with you or to do any of the other things that you do. You don't control his money or his accounts or his time. If he wasn't living with you, he'd probably be in a worse position. He's currently living rent-free. That's the sacrifice you make when you cut back hours to go back to study. Again, his decision. David is showing his entitlement and inserting himself where he has absolutely no right or relevance. He needs to get over himself. You could have adjusted as appropriate for that specific situation, including choosing less expensive activities if he was struggling. Am I the jerk for promising to pay for my adopted sister to go to uni, but not my biological brother? I, 21 female, have an adopted sister, Amy, who's 17, and a biological brother, Jerk, who's 16. My dad, 52 male, and my mom, 45 female, adopted Amy after fostering her. I do not live at home as I'm at uni, but I went home for Christmas. Growing up, my parents always favored Jerk and me over Amy. I did not have a good relationship with Jerk, and he doesn't really respect me, but our parents always let him get away with everything. Amy had the worst room, and my parents don't allow her to use my room when I'm away, even though I said she could. When I lived at home, I allowed her in my room, and we used to spend time together. I was not mistreated by my parents, but clearly they had a special bond with Jerk. Jerk almost never speaks to Amy. My parents kept discouraging me from speaking and having a good relationship with Amy indirectly. Amy was required to do way more chores than the rest of us, and I'd try to help Amy when my parents were away, even though she never asked me to. We have a fairly big house, and because of these extra chores, Amy did not have much of a social life, but she was very studious, I am too, and is doing fairly advanced courses for high school. My parents have always wanted me to be a nurse or a doctor, and told me they would only pay for my college if I picked something they agreed with. I wanted to do computer engineering, which they disapproved of. Amy also started getting into coding recently, although she didn't start as young as I did. I started saving for college, doing freelance work, and releasing some apps. Luckily, I got a partial scholarship and some loan funding, and I ended up going to a top school. One of my apps did quite well, and I started a company for it, and now I can comfortably pay off my debts when I need to, and I get paid a salary from my company. The thing is, I don't know how sustainable this will be long term, as it's just a startup, and if it loses momentum, it can fail. I'm considering hiring another developer to help support it, but I'm waiting till I graduate to decide about that. I also have investors interested, and I'm still thinking about that too. My parents have tried to sabotage my side gig, and I feel like it irks them, skipping the details because of character limit. During Christmas dinner, my parents announced to Amy that once she turns 18, they want to retire and she won't have to pay rent, but she can stay as long as she keeps helping out with her chores. I saw red, told my parents that it was wrong to see Amy as a live-in slave and that she was smart and had a bright future ahead. They said they aren't going to pay for her to go to college for a useless degree and that they needed help since they're retiring. They're very upper middle class and could easily afford a paid maid. I said I would pay for Amy and she's going to live with me if she got into a uni in the same city. Now everyone thinks I'm the jerk as I refuse to do the same for my brother and they aren't talking to me. I also gifted Amy a high-end laptop since she had no computer and they say I favor her. Not the jerk, but OMG, your parents, gross. Yup, I'm curious as to when your parents started fostering Amy because it's a known thing that in some states in the US, fostering an older kid will get you a nice big paycheck from the state every month, and some terrible people just foster older kids to be their live-in help, as well as collect that monthly check. Whether your parents did that or not, they clearly are treating Amy badly, and I'm so glad you have her back. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Good for you for having Amy's best interests at heart when it sounds like no one else does. While it should go without saying, I'll repeat it here anyway. It's your money, so it's your choice. Am I the jerk for knowingly obstructing someone's view at a sporting event? Myself and my partner attended a sports game recently, and a big part of this event is the major sponsor, KFC. The whole league gives out KFC buckets to wear on your head in the colors of your team. I usually wear this at every game I attend and have no visibility problems with the people behind me. However, on this particular game, the woman behind me did have an issue. As soon as I put on my bucket, she blurted out loudly, "Are you serious?" I chose to ignore the remark and left my bucket on. This comment was followed by many more throughout the game, such as when her male friend would make a comment about his team, she would say loudly, "Well, I wouldn't know because I can't see." And when my partner and I went to grab a beverage and returned to our seats, she again blurted out, "Great, I can't wait to not see again." My partner texted me throughout to ask if she was talking about me, and I responded with, "I won't entertain her comments. If she asks me nicely, I'll pretend I didn't realize and take it off straight away." I took this approach for the whole game. If she asked me nicely, I would take it off my head without hesitation, but I refused to reward her bad manners. She went to the extent of swapping seats with her male friend in the second half of the game, but still made remarks out loud, such as, "See? I told you you can't see," and "Do you understand why I'm upset now?" But he brushed it off and didn't make a fuss. So, am I the jerk for knowing that I was obstructing her view, but chose to match her pettiness about the situation? Edit. I lacked context about the buckets. These buckets are given out in every single game. Edit. I won't be entertaining any corporate media advertising BS. I wear the bucket because it's in the colors of my team and matches my tee, which is also the color of my team. Last edit. I obviously didn't know it was an issue until her first remark of, "Are you kidding me?" But with that kind of statement, why on earth would I reward her? This bucket has never been an issue before, as mentioned. You're the jerk. You're a bit hypocritical talking about bad manners. I don't get why he was the jerk. Not once did the woman ask him if he would mind taking it off. He didn't put it on with the intention of blocking her view. She should have acted as an adult and politely asked him if he could take it off as it was blocking her view. Instead, she acted as a toddler having a tantrum. Why anyone should reward that behavior is beyond me. Not the jerk. The fact that it's just some pathetic corporate handout makes this so much worse. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. So you were deliberately being a jerk, then you decided the only way you should be expected to not be a jerk is if someone asked you nicely? Then you chose not to tell anyone how to stop you from being a jerk? And now you actually think you may be in the right enough to ask for opinions? Big time, you're the jerk. I can almost hear your condescending, "See, all you had to do is ask nicely," if she had actually asked you to remove it. You got off on the power dynamic of knowing you were in control of the situation. You're even a jerk to yourself because you let it bother you the whole game instead of just taking it off like an adult. Yeah, maybe she didn't handle it in the best way, but it's a common reaction to a situation you caused. You ruined the game for her. I'll never understand stadiums that allow people to have such big objects that obstruct and affect the enjoyment everyone else has. You're the jerk, of course. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the woman sitting behind him? Please let us know. If someone was loudly complaining about me like that, you bet your butt I wouldn't take that thing off. You win bees with honey, not by being a Karen. These people on Reddit are so stupid with their comments sometimes. Next door neighbor keeps unscrewing my garage door light bulb. The people next door built on an empty lot and have been a pain in my side yard ever since. Now he's messing with a light bulb. Background: I get along with the wife. She seems okay, but the husband is a petty, insane lunatic. My first interaction was during fall. He had cut down all the trees on the lot, so he blew every leaf into my yard, claiming they were mine. Police threatened him with a fine for littering. If a branch falls and is thrown in my yard, I planted shrubs to stop his dogs from going to the bathroom in my yard after I saw him encouraging it into my yard. There have been dozens of crappy interactions. I cope by ignoring him and steering clear. I have a light bulb on the side of my house. It's next to an exterior door that goes into my garage. 2 more lights on the same switch are on either side of the overhead garage doors. This side of my house is 25 feet from the side of his. There are bedrooms and windows. When the light is on, it casts light on those windows. I have the same issue with my other neighbor and have had blackout curtains for the last 14 years that I've lived here. They are motion activated and floodlights all night. Curtains work and I don't see any light. I do not use these garage lights often. When I do go out of town, they are left on. When I came home from my last trip, only the lights on the front of my house were on. I later discovered the side light was unscrewed. We used to have 150-watt LEDs, which I downgraded to a 60-watt. If there was not a history of teenagers cutting through my yard at night, I would have removed the light fixture altogether. However, I keep seeing tracks in the snow or dirt all year long, so I keep it lit for my own security. It's really upset me that he's trespassing onto my yard to loosen my light bulb. I don't know what to do at this time, but I'm mad. The 150-watt light bulb is going back, and I'm going to leave the light on more often. My retired police officer friend told me to put my Ring doorbell on the back door to catch the action. Nothing will happen legally, but I could put the video on the neighborhood Facebook page to publicly shame him and ask, "Anybody know who this is?" I get it, I'm being petty, but it's my darn light. Who does he think he is to come into my yard and unscrew it? I never thought of doing that to my neighbors. I just bought blackout curtains. Am I overreacting? I feel that his pettiness has hit a vein and turned me to petty as well. What would you do? Head over to Costco and get one of those new LED security lights. There are no bulbs to unscrew. Can you adjust the light so it doesn't point directly into their windows? Yes, they sound like crappy neighbors, but this seems like something that could easily be remedied. Add a camera for extra security. If, after you've adjusted the light, he's still coming onto your property, then go to the next step. I think you should replace the offending light with one that doesn't shine into his windows, but add security cameras. Be the better person. My wife is demanding I share my work bonus with her. I, 40 male, work full-time while my wife, who's 39, is a stay-at-home mom for our 2 kids, who are 3 and 7. Since she's become a stay-at-home mom, her parents always give her some money as a present for Christmas. It's about $1,000, sometimes more depending on their financial situation. I receive a similar amount as a Christmas bonus at work, though it varies too. We decided that our respective Christmas cash would be our independent spending money for the year, that it's kept separate from the rest of our finances, which are shared. This year, my in-laws are struggling a bit financially, and as a result, they gave my wife $100 for Christmas. I recently received a promotion, and as a result, my bonus was $1,300 this year. When I told my wife this, she said that we should split the money so that we both have $700 to spend. I refused because our agreement was that we would keep our Christmas money separate and spend it how we choose to. There's usually a small difference, about $100 or $200, between what her parents give her and what I receive as a bonus, but we've never split the money 50-50, so there's no reason to start doing that now that it benefits her. I also brought up how a few years back, my company had a particularly rough year, and as a result, I only got a $100 bonus. That same year, my wife got $1,000 from her parents and did not split it with me, and I didn't expect her to. So if she didn't think we should split the money 50-50 back then, when she had received more, she shouldn't expect me to split it 50-50 now. We've been arguing about this since Christmas, as she brings it up constantly and is causing a lot of tension in our household. Am I the jerk for not splitting my Christmas bonus with her? I don't get this new BS of we're married but we have separate money. You're supposed to be a family, for goodness sake. Put your money together and create a budget. If you're both that selfish, you never should have gotten married and had kids. You're both the jerks, in my opinion. This is why I would never agree to be a stay-at-home mom. I need my own finances. Everyone sucks here. If one of you gets significantly more spending money than the other, that's not right, and you should share in those years. Saying, well, this is mine, too bad, doesn't show a lot of love or affection for each other. I can't imagine doing this to my spouse. I would feel so bad and guilty because I love him and want to make him happy a lot more than I want all of my spending money. You're the jerk. My ex-husband used to try to pull this crap on me too. He'd get a nice $50,000 bonus at the end of the year and refuse to share it with me. His argument was that he worked 60-hour weeks for most of the year, so that bonus should be his to put into our retirement. All he ever wanted to do was save for retirement and the kids' college funds. I was the one working 24 hours a day by staying home with our two kids, and he only gave me around $4,000 a month to pay all of the bills, and I could do whatever I wanted with the rest. Long story short, I now get half of his retirement plus alimony, and I have a new man who isn't controlling with our money. My new man puts my name on all of his accounts and doesn't care how much I spend. Don't waste your life with a controlling jerk who feels entitled to hog bonuses. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. If it benefits only me, that's fine, but benefiting only you, that's a no-go. You must work the weekend. I was an IT contractor for a company doing a large new project. There were about 30 people writing code. We were allowed as much overtime as we were willing to work, and I could use the money. I was working 12-hour days, 5 days a week. On the weekends, I would go racing, usually out of state. It was common on Thursday to get called into a meeting saying we needed to work 8 hours Saturday, 4 on Sunday. Most people would have 52 hours in total. I would do it if available, putting me at 72 or 76, since 4 hours is stupid. Other times, I would point out I would already be at 60 and had plans. I was given an exception the first couple times. Then I was told that I was not being a team player. So I clarify. If I work 12 hours between 5 p.m. Friday and 9 a.m. Monday, is that good? Yes. Well, okay then. I left the office at 9 p.m. on Friday, 4 of the 12 down. The race trailer was already loaded up and ready to go. I headed out in the morning for a 4-hour drive. After the race, I headed back. Since I was driving near the office and the parking lot was empty, I pulled in the trailer and all around 3 a.m. I figured just badging in wasn't enough to demonstrate compliance. I sent an email out to the group with every task I completed. I completed everything I had been assigned. There was a whiteboard with unassigned tasks. I sent an email that I was pulling a task, then another when completed. I had my full hours in at 11 a.m. I was being smart about it. However, I didn't really expect the manager to get as annoyed about it as he did. A bit later, my contract was cut by that manager for my abrasive personality. The fallout seems to have been against me, but not in the end. My contract was cut, I was told on a Thursday morning and given the next 3 full weeks notice. By Thursday afternoon, I had a job interview scheduled for Monday, By Monday afternoon, I had a couple more scheduled. I started a new position with no gap. This is pretty much the malicious compliance. Below is the fallout from the retaliation. The manager blamed the abrasive personality comment on the business. They're the people asking for and defining the project. I only worked with one. During my notice, I was working with her. I said something about someone else having to do the next phase. She says, yeah, that sucks. I then tell her that I was told the business wanted me gone. Since she was the only business I dealt with, I waved goodbye to her. She just got a ticked off look and stormed off. Her anger went up the organization tree and back down my branch. Manager was told, I want OP on this project. Deal with it. I had multiple people, HR, managers, peers, etc., ask me if I wanted to stay. They would have to make the crap hit the fan to do so. They didn't want to do that if I was leaving anyway. I said I already had accepted an offer. I just wished he had to be the one to ask me to stay. He was made to ask me if I could extend the notice period to provide training sessions on my techniques. Me. So you want my productivity, just not me? Well, yeah. No, I'm already scheduled to start a new position. During my notice, 12 people found new positions and gave their notice. The attitude was that if the company was willing to cut me, they could cut anyone at any time. They would rather leave on their terms. This was not a problem for coders at that particular point in time. I was still working 60 hours a week during my notice period. On my last day when leaving, the only person still there was the manager's boss. When I said bye, he said he had meant to talk to me before I left. I sat down and talked. I said, you must be wondering why I would be working late on my last day. I wanted the section of software I was on to be working before I left so no one could blame me for it not getting done. I said I was the only one left in the last few months who was still working on it. All tests had passed that day. Another section with similar work had 6 people working on it and it's not done. He began to question the manager's decision-making. He thanked me and said he may reach out in the future. A couple of months later, someone reached out to me to see if I would come back. The manager's contract was cut, as were the other 3 people from his contract house. An employee who was buddies with the manager was moved off the project. Apparently, since the manager was also a contractor, he could not technically cut my contract. It was done by this employee. I didn't go back, as my new, abrasive personality, manager, and I got along great. Am I the jerk for giving my daughter a list of rules to follow to live with us? My husband, Luke, and I's eldest child, Betty, who's 25, female, moved out last year. When Betty lived with us, there were many tantrums thrown about the house rules. Things like why she couldn't have wild parties at the house, why did she have to load the dishwasher without being paid, or why we bought our son a laptop that he needed for school but wouldn't give her money to go to Coachella. Luke and I explained to Betty that she is not owed fun money from us. We will not pay for her doing chores because she will have to do chores regardless of whose house she lives in. She's an adult, and once she moves out and pays for her own things, housing, utilities, car insurance, gas, groceries, etc., then she can do whatever she wants. Since moving out, Betty has frequently asked us for money because she either can't afford to do something fun with her friends or she doesn't have time to because of work. Luke and I always refuse because vacations and nights out aren't a need, and being an adult means you don't get to hang out with your friends or go do expensive things all the time. We went out to lunch with Betty last week and she asked to live with us again. Luke and I said that as long as she honored the following stipulations, we were more than happy to let her return home. 1. Pay rent every month, $500 that covers groceries and utilities as well, or be in school. If she chooses to be in school, we will pay for her schooling and any tutors, but she must take her education seriously and earn passing grades. Do a fair share of chores, load and unload the dishwasher, clean the pool, wipe the kitchen counter and stove, and help put away groceries. No wild parties at the house, nothing illegal, and she can't smoke. If she wants to, she has to do it somewhere else. Betty said she refused to agree to these rules, so we told her, okay, that this is her choice to make, and it's also our choice to not allow her to move back in. Betty tried to start an argument, but Luke and I weren't playing along. We told Betty that she's 25 and it's time for her to grow up. She needs to accept now that this is reality and get used to handling her own adult things. My in-laws and a friend of Betty's have reached out to tell Luke and I that we're the jerks. They said that they couldn't believe we were charging Betty rent let alone asking her to do chores on top of it, because she's our kid, and don't we love her? Betty is our kid, and we do love her. Nothing will change that. At the same time, Betty's a grown adult. People aren't going to fund and enable her just to have fun all the time, even and especially not us. Luke and I don't understand how multiple people think this is selfish or unreasonable. So I'm looking for neutral perspectives on here. To answer the question of why Betty has this mentality that Luke and I should enable her to have fun all day, Betty's biological father has unfortunately caused her to develop this attitude. He insists that my husband and I should pay for Betty to have fun all day and handle her responsibilities, yet isn't willing to actually do it himself. Not the jerk. These are all entirely reasonable stipulations for an adult kid living at home. My 20-year-old contributes to the rent and bills. Adults pay rent. That's how it is. I'm Betty's age, and I can't imagine the entitlement of not even agreeing to this lenient of requirements as though you're owed no requirements. And the family agreeing? Yikes. How do these people exist and live? Like, what about their life means that these are unreasonable expectations? I'm the same age as this girl, yet I have a mortgage to pay, recently finished school while working and paying that, all while doing chores to maintain my space, which is just part of life. Though I do get to throw wild parties whenever I want, but cleaning up after that is also a horrible chore. Way worse than wiping countertops and unpacking groceries. OP, you're not the jerk for these rules about her moving back in, but I gotta ask, how did she get like this? You seem reasonable. This is nuts from your kid if you raised her as sensibly as you sound. Is some context missing, or did the apple just land on a different continent from the tree somehow? Not the jerk. Coming from someone who lived at my parents' house in my 20s, the rules seem reasonable. Something my parents did was to take rent from me, but once I moved out, all that money was set aside and given back. Got me into the habit of setting that money aside and budgeting. It was nice to have a nest egg and a safety net when I did venture out on my own. If she was able to live on her own and wants to move back for low funds, $500 is super generous. I'm guessing that apartments are at least double, if not triple that, though I don't know the going rate where you are. Last thing I'll say is that it's funny that people are reaching out to criticize, but not stepping up to say she can move in with them with no strings attached. You're the jerk. At the end of the day, this is your daughter, and it sounds like you and your husband are refusing to be actual parents to her. Instead of trying to be so controlling, why not be proactive and show that you understand her? She wants to go to Coachella? Okay, why not let her go? But also you and your husband attend also, to show her that her interests matter to you. She wants to have get-togethers with her friends at the house? Great idea. Now you get to actually meet her friends and know that she's safe. The problem with so many parents these days is that you just want to be controlling and make your kids feel bad. My parents were just like you, which is why I went no contact and have been homeless several times throughout my adult life. I hope you fix your attitude before it causes long-lasting damage to your daughter, who's just trying to find her way in this lonely world. So lonely in this world I am. Day by day, I take it as I can. Love me for who I am, or hate me for who I'm not. So dark and damp, alone here I rot. Somebody's got some issues. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know. I can't imagine having a Karen for a kid. So glad we don't have any. Am I the jerk for getting my uncle in trouble and causing him to lose money? I left my church recently, and my dad keeps sending church members to my house to save me. Recently, a pair of church volunteers came over to talk with me. They offered assistance with anything I might need. Some of them, I had them help around my farm while we talked. We talked about where they're from. They're volunteering for 2 years from out of country. What they plan on doing when they get home, how's my life going, and why I stopped believing. The next week, one of them called and said they weren't sure if they believed when they left the country, and after our talk, they realized they didn't believe and wanted to return home. The problem was that their volunteer coordinator was holding on to their important documents so they wouldn't get misplaced, and one of the things was his passport. The coordinator said he would only give it back after his 2 years were finished. He asked if I could get it back for him since the coordinator is my uncle. I spoke to my uncle, and he said he knew I was the one who corrupted him and basically told me to kick rocks. I told him I would call the police on him if he didn't give him back the passport, and he said I didn't have the courage to do that. So I called the police, and they redirected me to the Australian embassy. My uncle was fined quite a hefty amount, and they told him that he had 3 days to return the passport or they would start the process to charge him. Word got around his church, and now he's been released from his paid coordinator position. My family are saying I went too far, and that I only did this because he insisted me, and that they knew he would have given the volunteer his documents back. That he has too many physical problems to get another job, and I shouldn't have said anything. I'm starting to think maybe I did the wrong thing here, and I should have tried other avenues before going straight to the police. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Not all heroes have capes, and you, sir, are a hero. If your uncle could not get another job, then he should not have been breaking the law by illegally keeping those people's documents. Your uncle's predicament is not your fault. It's his, 100%, and you saved those people who he was treating like this. Not the jerk. You were right to call him out for an illegal act. The passports are property of the issuing nation, so it was wrong for uncle to hold them. Case closed. Am I the jerk for telling my granddaughter to stop referring to her dad's girlfriend as her mom? My son-in-law, David, 44, is getting remarried to Katie, who's 31, female. I'm 64, female, and my granddaughter, who's 14, has been referring to Katie for the past 18 months or so. Her mom, Annie, 32, female, passed away 10 years ago. We've remained close with David for the kids. It hurts to hear her refer to another woman as her mom, as it feels like everyone is just forgetting that Annie existed. It already feels a little like David is replacing Annie with Katie, as they have a similar look. Christmas is always hard. Annie passed in the week leading up to Christmas, and her birthday is at the start of January. This year, we had David, Katie, my 3 grandkids, and Katie's daughter at ours for Christmas. My granddaughter was very excitedly talking about a dance competition that Katie was taking her to this new year. As she was talking, she kept referring to Katie as her mom, and I ended up excusing myself because I felt that I was getting upset, as it should have been Annie doing these things with her, not Katie. Later on after dinner, my granddaughter found me upstairs looking at pictures of Annie. She asked me if everything was okay, as she knew I was upset. I told her that Christmas just makes me a little sad. She replied that I should talk with Mom because Christmas also makes her upset. Katie's mom passed when she was young, on Christmas, I believe. I snapped at her and told her that Katie wasn't her mom and she should stop referring to her as such, as it's disrespectful to her actual mom, Annie. I know I crossed a line snapping at her, but Katie isn't her mom. David, Katie, and all 4 kids left not long after I snapped at her. David has since called me to say that the kids won't be coming around for their weekly dinner for a while as they need space. My granddaughter isn't talking to me at all. My husband thinks I was an idiot for snapping, as I should be happy that our grandkids have a mother figure and that Katie was willing to work at forming such close bonds with all of them. Am I the jerk? Edit. Katie has been to visit this morning after dropping off the kids at school. She apologized for David saying the kids won't be coming to dinner. It was a knee-jerk reaction to finding out I had snapped at my granddaughter. She also apologized for stepping on my toes in regards to boundaries with the kids. She explained that she was 13 when she lost her mom. Her mom had been sick for a long time before she passed, so they knew it was coming, but it still hurt. She had to grow into an adult without a mother figure, and it hurt that she didn't have anyone she could go to about things she couldn't talk to her dad about. As a result, she would latch on to her brother's girlfriends and talk to them about things, but would end up hurt when the girlfriend would eventually leave, and it was like losing her mom again. It was part of the reason for the addiction she had had. When she and David got together, she felt the need to try and be a mother figure to the kids so they could have what she didn't. She didn't want them to end up like she did. When my granddaughter first started calling her mom, Katie was resistant to it because she didn't want to replace Annie, but David made her realize that she wasn't replacing Annie, she was supporting the kids, and that's what Annie would have wanted. Katie asked if I had asked my granddaughter about the necklace she had been given for Christmas. I hadn't. Katie had bought her a locket, and inside was a picture of her as a baby with Annie, so that she could always keep Annie close to her heart, and Annie would always be with her. Katie has said that she will talk to David about the kids coming to dinner, but has said that it might be worth looking into counseling and has offered to take me to bereavement support group that she and David go to. I've said I will go with her and look into counseling, as I don't want to lose my grandkids. I'm glad she came to talk to me and that I posted here. I hadn't realized how much grief was still affecting me. I'm glad David has found someone as compassionate as Katie. You're the jerk. Your husband is exactly right. You also should see a therapist about processing your grief, as it does not sound like you've really done that. I'm sorry to say this, but Annie is gone. Statements like, it should have been Annie doing things with her, not Katie, are concerning. Annie passed a long time ago. Sorry, OP, you need some serious help moving on. I'm sure everyone else wishes Annie was still around too, but she's not. She won't ever be. You need some help to move on. Go get it now before you start having to grieve the loss of your granddaughter too when she decides she can't be around her grandmother anymore. You're the jerk. Katie being her mom now doesn't erase Annie having been her mom. She's had 2 moms. That's fine. You are prioritizing the memory of your daughter over the living, breathing humans in your life. You're the jerk. Look, this can't be easy for you and your husband, or David for that matter. Your granddaughter was 4 when Annie passed. How much does she actually remember from that age? How long has Katie been in her life? Is it only 18 months that she's referred to her as mom? Or 18 months since they've known each other? You have every right to be sad and feel what you feel, but don't take it out on your 14-year-old granddaughter who has found someone she can have this beautiful bond with. Annie will never be replaced, but Katie can provide your granddaughter with the love I'm sure Annie would have wanted her to have. Am I the jerk for refusing to get rid of my peanuts, even though my roommate's boyfriend is allergic? I, 21 female, live with Amy, 21 female. We get along fine, but I wouldn't say we're great friends or anything. About 2 weeks ago, Amy started dating this guy, Josh, 20 male. Josh is apparently very allergic to peanuts. Amy says it's okay if he has some exposure to peanut dust or if peanuts are eaten in his proximity, but he'll become very ill and it could be fatal if he eats a peanut. Amy wants to be really careful about peanuts in the house now. I have a big tub of peanuts, maybe 4 inches wide and 5 inches tall, the 2-pound Planters peanuts if you find them at the grocery store, that I eat often as a snack, and Amy asked me to throw it away. I told her no. I'm happy to purchase a snack besides peanuts when I finish the tub. It's about half eaten. I'll probably finish it in about 2 months. I'm not like married to peanuts or anything, but I'm not going to throw away perfectly good food. I was raised without enough food on the table sometimes, and I absolutely will not waste a bunch of food. I know it's not the biggest deal, but it's a principle thing for me. Now, if it was my roommate who was allergic to peanuts, I would definitely consider it. But my roommate's boyfriend of 2 weeks who does not pay rent here is not a valid reason for me to waste food. I always wipe down the counter after I eat anyways, so I will keep traces of peanuts away from Josh, even though he's okay to come into slight contact with it. If he's concerned about contact with peanuts, he does not have to come over much for the next 2 months. Again, after that, I'll buy a different snack. But until then, I'm going to keep eating my peanuts and cleaning up after I do so. The main reason why I won't give my peanuts to someone else is for those reasons. I feel that given Josh's newness and the fact that he doesn't live here, I have a right to eat peanuts if I want to, and if I already own them. Amy is really angry that I won't get rid of them. I've talked with my friends and they're split. Some say I'm the jerk because he can't help that he's allergic to peanuts, and I'm creating an environment that may make him uncomfortable. My other friends say I'm not the jerk because it's my house. My tub of peanuts is older than Amy and Josh's relationship, and I could get rid of my peanuts only for them to break up. I wanted to get more opinions on this as I don't want to be a major jerk, but I'm okay with slightly inconveniencing Amy for the sake of not wasting food. So, am I the jerk? 1. Her boyfriend just can't eat peanuts. Otherwise, it's not like if he stares at a peanut he'll milt or something, so I don't know what's going on with your roommate's head. 2. He doesn't live there. Therefore, it shouldn't be a problem. Not the jerk. 3. If your roommate is dating someone so stupid that they would eat a peanut-shaped thing from a box that smelled like peanuts and has peanuts written on the outside, I question both of their intelligence. Since he's not a resident and the relationship is so fresh, I'd say not the jerk. They've even admitted it isn't a serious issue, and unless he eats them, he should be fine. I have 2 teens with nut allergies that are similar. As long as they aren't eating them, we're okay. Your roommate is overreacting to this situation. Not the jerk. As you said, he doesn't live there, and it's ridiculous to waste food. I see so many posts on here where a roommate's significant other has an issue with something about the OP, and I always think, can the roommate and significant other not hang out at the significant other's place? So that's my question. Can they not hang out at Josh's place? Am I the jerk for only speaking my mother language in my home and making my son's girlfriend uncomfortable? Some background. I, 41 male, am originally American. I moved to Norway over 2 decades ago for school and met my wife, 38, Mary. We have 3 kids. John, who's 16, we have a 14-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. Mary and I both think being at least bilingual is a necessary skill, so we speak English in our home. The kids are free to speak in either English or Norwegian at home, and my wife will speak Norwegian about 50% of the time, but I speak English 99% of the time at home. I do so because it both comes easier to me, and I would hate to get rusty. Plus, it's a nice respite from my work life where I seldom get to speak English. On to the story. A few months ago, John started dating a girl, 16, Hannah, and he introduced her to the family in early December. She's a very sweet girl and has definitely been good for him. She seemed a bit quiet, but I didn't really pay it any mind until last Thursday. Hannah came over for dinner, and about halfway through, John was staring daggers at me. After dinner, Hannah left, and John said he needed to speak to me. He told me that Hannah was too intimidated to speak and has felt excluded since she met me because her English isn't the best. I asked if she was having a hard time understanding me, and if so, I can speak slower and more clearly. He told me that wasn't enough, and I needed to speak Norwegian so that she doesn't feel like an idiot spectator in my presence. For context, both of his siblings still spoke Norwegian, and they were leading most of the discussion alongside Mary. I told my son that this is my home, and I will speak in the language I want. I can accommodate his girlfriend in any other way, but this has been the agreement in our house since he was born. He called me a stubborn jerk and said that this is Norway, people speak Norwegian, and that it was unfair that she should feel like an idiot just because she doesn't speak my mother tongue. Mary chimed in and said that we should give Hannah lessons if it was a big problem, and that she could help him do so. John said that wasn't the point, then stormed off to his room. He hasn't been speaking to me since, and both of his siblings have said I should just speak Norwegian when she's here. My wife is on my side and said he'll get over it eventually, but said if it really bothers me, I should just concede. My coworkers are split on the issue, and so I'm here. Am I the jerk? Edit. English is taught in schools here at a very young age, and from what I have heard from Hannah speaking, she's pretty good, just uncomfortable. Edit 2. I realized I said a decade instead of 2. I moved here when I was 20. Edit 3. I'm extremely surprised by the volume of comments on this post. While I think a lot of commenters here don't understand how common English is here or the general level of proficiency, especially amongst the young, making Hannah uncomfortable is not my goal, and I really do think she's very, very good for and to John. I will apologize to John in the morning and ask if him, Hannah, and I can sit down and talk about how I can make her feel more comfortable visiting our home. Thank you to all of the commenters here, even the ones who called my son a jerk, which he isn't, just a teenager trying to navigate his first relationship. I'll be going to bed now as it's late, but I'll be reading the comments in the morning in case anyone has some insight. Edit 4. Why did I wake up to so many comments filled with seething rage? The name calling is rather unnecessary. What nerve did I strike in the American psyche that so many would be so angry? I talked with my son this morning, or rather, he talked to me. He told me he was sorry, and I apologized for dismissing him completely. I'm taking him and his girlfriend out for lunch today. Soft, you're the jerk. I get where you're coming from, your home, etc. But you've said she's visited only a few times. A considerate host speaks the most common language for the guests. If you don't want to, fine. But then you'd be an inconsiderate host, and that's a synonym for a jerk. Might I recommend starting out in Norwegian, then when she's more comfortable with you and your family, offer to help her practice her English. No jerks here. I get why Hannah asked, but it's still your home, and this is what you usually do in your home. You don't speak English just to annoy or make her feel left out. You do it because it's your mother tongue and it's your home. I'm also a foreigner living in Norway, and we speak both English and Norwegian in our household. No kids yet though. But I work with kids, and I know that kids nowadays are generally very good in English, and she herself said that she has issues speaking English, then she can just reply in Norwegian. Not the jerk. My ex-mother-in-law was a native Spanish speaker and would only speak mostly Spanish with her son and his siblings when I was around. I never would have dreamt of telling her to speak English for me. I feel that would have been beyond rude. I even learned a bit of Spanish and could understand a lot of what she was saying. You don't dictate what language someone speaks. You're the jerk. You're deliberately making a guest in your home, your son's girlfriend, feel uncomfortable and excluded. If you're able to speak a language everyone in the room understands, but choose to speak a language someone is not comfortably fluent in, that's just rude. Also, you're encouraging your son to spend less time at home and telling him you don't give a hoot about his relationship or his girlfriend. My goodness, you're the jerk. Have you never had a guest before? Perhaps not. Let me explain. A guest is someone who enters your home to spend time with you. The host typically tries to make the guest feel welcome and at home. A 41-year-old refusing to speak the native language of the country in which he's residing, thereby making a 16-year-old with uncertain English language skills feel uncomfortable, is a bad host, and face it, behaving like a bully. Your comments about the importance of bilingualism are beside the point. I don't think your teenage kids are going to lose their English language skills because you speak Norwegian for a few dinners. You're such a jerk, and your attitude is off the charts. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I speak in Karenese no matter who's at our house. My husband demanded I bake him a watermelon. Huge mistake. This is a family story that my grandmother, who's now passed on, told me for all of my life. Grandmama was an epic storyteller, and this tale is a family legend. My grandfather passed before I was born, and my grandmother would tell me such amazing tales of their deep love, hardships, and life together that I felt like I really almost knew him. This story takes place in the mid-50s in rural America. For context, that was a time and place when it was common and expected that most households, the men worked and the women stayed home, kept house and raised the kids, and the man was unequivocally the head of the family. These were the values of my grandparents, and they were happy with it. By all accounts, my grandfather had an adventurous palate and loved to try new foods. There wasn't an exceptionally large variety of exotic or new foods available in rural small-town groceries or markets in that era, so mostly people made dozens of variations of all the same foods that they were familiar with or could grow in their gardens. Well, the story goes that there had been some conversations at work that day where my grandfather had been bragging about what a good wife he had and how she would always cook him anything that he asked for to eat. I can almost hear the guys going, "Oh yeah? Is that so? Well, what about?" So my grandfather, Felix, comes home and he tells my grandmother, "Gladys, I want you to bake me a watermelon." Gladys, "What?" Felix, "I've decided I want to try baked watermelon and I want you to cook it for me." Gladys, "Felix, I'm not baking a watermelon." Felix, "Well, of course you are, because I've asked you to." Gladys, "Absolutely not. That's absurd. You can't bake a watermelon. It will." Felix, "Now see here. I'm your husband, and all this arguing and carrying on is uncalled for. I've already told the guys about how you'll make me anything I ask for, and that you'll make me this, even though they think that you won't. Now, I put this roof over our heads. I'm the man of this house, and if I want you to cook me a watermelon, then that's what you'll do." Having played the dreaded man card, my grandfather had secured the argument, and I could always picture my grandmother standing there seething until suddenly going stone cold. The only sign of trouble, that little twinkle of malice in her eye. Gladys, "Fine, Felix, so be it. I will bake you a watermelon, on one condition. You'll clean up after it." My grandfather, having foolishly cut her off earlier, and believing now that he had the upper hand, saw no problem with this and easily agreed. After all, how much trouble could it be to clean up after a watermelon? As the story goes, when that watermelon exploded inside the old stove, it blew the top completely off, and it was like a red liquid sugar bomb hit the entire kitchen. My grandfather, a man of honor and true to his word, and newly repentant for his attitude and not listening to his wife, cleaned everything. The walls, ceiling, floors, the entire kitchen. My grandmother got a new stove out of the deal, as well as the delicious victory of, "I tried to tell you." And Felix got to go back to work and tell the guys that his wife had, in fact, baked him a watermelon, that it was absolutely indescribable, and how he hoped that they had wives as good as his and would soon get to try it for themselves at home. I got $500 worth of prime rib for almost free thanks to scanner law. I was visiting my local grocery store on Sunday in Michigan with the intention of buying a couple of pounds of chicken wings and 2 steaks for my wife and I. As the meat department clerk was weighing and preparing my wings, I looked at the prime rib and the very large, Think 12 to 13 pounds apiece, prime rib sections were listed with the dollar amount, and then each. I thought this was peculiar because that just seemed off to me. It should have said dollar amount per pound. I snapped a photo of the price tag and then I took a flyer and said, "Hey, I have a big party coming up. I need all of your prime rib." He looked at me like I was crazy and began the process of packaging up 6 of the whole prime ribs. I cook for a veterans group on Saturdays, and this would not only go far, but it would save a ton of money on their budget. I went up to the register and the meat rang up for over $140 per package. I scanned each of them, I paid the price, and I walked right over to customer service. The customer service attendant got very wide-eyed and called over a manager. I walked with the manager over to the meat area where the price was still displayed as $17.99 each, and I let him know that due to the scanner law, I just want the difference, with the $5 added to each. The manager was livid. They completed the refund of the difference, and he said to me, "This could very well lead to someone losing their job." At that point, I said, "You can't be serious. I'll return the meat. Nobody needs to lose their job." The manager responded with, "Maybe you shouldn't have taken advantage of the fact that somebody made a mistake because it's already too late." So, am I the jerk here for taking advantage of the incorrect price? If this was a mom and pop local butcher shop, you're the jerk. If this was a giant chain, not the jerk. As far as the firing goes, that's not on you. You don't know the employee's work history leading up to this. More likely than not, the manager was just trying to make you feel bad. Edit. Not the jerk. OP confirmed it's a huge chain. OP. It's the biggest grocery corporation in the US. Forget the Waltons. Enjoy the prime rib dinner with the vets. Edit. Since many of you are pointing out Walmart isn't the leading grocer, let me be clear. Forget Kroger, forget Fred Meyer, forget Amazon, forget Procter & Gamble. I'm all for forget the Waltons, but what a lot of people don't realize is that when mistakes like this are made, it doesn't affect the Waltons, it affects the employees. This may not only cost someone their job, but it most definitely cost everyone in that store their bonus for the quarter. People are crazy to think the higher-ups would lose from their own pockets before taking it out on those who need it more. Not the jerk. Not your fault they made a mistake. That manager, however, is a jerk if he's going to fire someone over $500 or blame you for their mistake. Not the jerk. It's a major grocery chain. I imagine the manager was just trying to make you feel bad. Grocery stores throw away tons of food every day and destroy it so it can't even be used to serve the homeless, etc. Forget them. I'm never mad at people for stealing food. Edit. Thank you for doubling my comment karma on this one post, y'all. Lol at all the "you're the jerks." Not the jerk by a huge mile. The manager needs to do their job and not guilt trip you for taking advantage of the law. I'm so torn here. If it's scanned at the listed price, I'd say you were just taking advantage of an error, which I honestly can't say I've never done. Where I start thinking you might be the jerk is that you went ahead and made the store enforce the wrong price, even though everyone involved knew it was an error and you bought all of the prime rib. This goes beyond taking advantage and gets into jerk territory. Someone likely will lose their job over this. When I was a cashier at a grocery store in high school, I was fired for a customer writing a check. Yeah, this was a long time ago, for $100 less than their order, which meant my till was $100 short. I should have double-checked, but I didn't. Same thing with the employee who put the wrong price up. Should one mistake cost you a job? Probably not, but that's the way this usually shakes out. I honestly am not sure which way to go with this one, but I'm forced to make a judgment. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. You knew it was a pricing mistake when you took the picture. It's one thing to do it with a single prime rib, but to wipe out their entire inventory is gluttonous. What you do with the prime rib after you've bought it has nothing to do with the impact that it has on the poor clerk working there, nor the other customers that may have also wanted the product. Adding the part about cooking for veterans comes off as emotionally manipulative to me. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. You knew the price was labeled wrong. You should have simply called attention to the fact. Instead, you intentionally ripped off the store for your own benefit. Sounds like you're legally in the clear, but that doesn't make it right. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for what he did or not? Please let us know. All these commenters on Reddit show you why stores have to be so strict about stuff. If it were up to these guys, they'd just steal everything they could get their hands on. Would I be the jerk for refusing a large cash gift on behalf of my kids? My 2 kids are 15 and 13. My dad very unceremoniously left our family when I turned 20. He wasn't a bad guy necessarily. To him, he fulfilled his obligation to raise me to an adult and wanted to cut ties and live his own life because he became a father very young. In the 25 years since he left, he's lived his dream with lots of travel. I know it shouldn't have affected me as much as it did since I was an adult, but it devastated my mom, and he promised he'd keep in touch with all of us. He never did. Since then, I've only spoken to him 4 or 5 times, and I haven't met him. My mom has never spoken to him again. This was all on his end. We tried to no avail. When I had kids of my own, we didn't pretend I didn't have a dad or he passed or anything like that. I was always forthright and told my daughters that he decided not to be a dad anymore, and it hurt Grandma and me deeply. If my kids had any questions, I told them the truth with how it affected us, but also more menial things like how he was, who he was, and so on. My kids have a generally negative view of him, and they came to their own conclusions given all the facts with no hyperbole or sugarcoating. He emailed me to talk on the phone last week, and he told me that he's passing with stage 4 cancer. We talked a bit about him leaving, and he said that he didn't regret his decision because his life was taken from him. He said he respects that I turned into a well-adjusted adult, and he's proud that I've gotten so far, even without him, but that he doesn't love me and has no intention of seeing me before he goes. He did say, however, that he's dividing his assets between a few close friends and wanted to leave $25,000 each to both of my kids. He was a penny pincher, but still lived modestly. He only ever worked to maintain, never to grow, so I don't doubt this is a large chunk of his total assets. He said it's only right that they get this money because they're his only grandkids. I'm conflicted because accepting this money means, at least how my brain rationalizes it, that I forgive him or that it's okay or healthy to have lived how he did. I don't want my kids to get a lump sum and suddenly have a change of heart about him. I'm thinking of refusing the money on their behalf because it sets a bad example. My wife stands by my decision. But would I be the jerk to my kids for taking this choice from them? They don't know about it, and my plan is to keep them in the dark about it, possibly forever. You would be the jerk. You said it yourself. You want to preserve the kid's negative opinion of him. That's very selfish of you. You want to ensure he passes on without ever having done one single nice thing for your kids. Out of spite, you're going to punish your kids because of being mad at your father. And if your kids ever find out, you're the one they'll be mad at. Sounds like a bad idea to me. Also, taking someone's money doesn't mean forgiving them. He didn't ask for forgiveness and you're not giving it. He's just passing and he's putting his affairs in order and your kids can benefit. The kicker is OP's tentative plan to never ever tell his kids about the decision he's making on their behalf. He wants to feel completely in control of his father's forgiveness, but he's too much of a coward to let his kids decide whether to forgive him. Pretty shameless in my opinion. This is an excellent point. He's all brutal honest about someone else's actions, yet he doesn't want his kids to know what he does. Imagine these kids years from now finding out that they could have had an extra $25,000 each, plus accrued interest to help them with college or trade school, and here their dad is thinking selfishly. Because they will find out. People always find out. Accept it. Consider it a bad dad tax. Tell your kids they got it because your dad had nothing better to do with the money, not because he cares. That it was a Hail Mary to try and get into heaven or something. That said, go with your conscience. If you couldn't live with yourself, then you'd be not the jerk for turning it down. Well, what do you think? Would OP be the jerk if he turned down the money for his kids or not? Please let us know. Money's money, bro. I'd claim that. Skirt, skirt. Malicious compliance cost £1 million per year. This happened around 15 years ago. I used to lead a back office process for a shared service center, which wholly owned a major European telco. The offshore unit was based in India. One of the processes that we had was SIM activation, which was a manual process. New SIM card activation used to come in an Excel sheet which the team used to activate based on certain prerequisite checks. It was a 15-member team which worked 24/7. We came up with an idea to automate, and using macros, were able to automate almost 85 to 90% of the process. My stakeholder back in the EU was happy, and we were able to redeploy 12 members to different units outside my processes. Couple of months, come our new compliance head. As a part of his induction, we showed him our process, and he was quick to point out the automation and how it was not compliant since it was not made by IT. Anyone who has worked in corporate knows IT turnaround for simple automation. He made us shut down the automation and manually restart the process, and we had to raise a request to IT to automate this. This was a Friday. During the weekend, customer service received huge escalations and complaints. It was also not a good onboarding experience. The stakeholder was not happy and raised an escalation with the Indian management team. The head of compliance blamed us for not following process. I had already briefed the stakeholder on what transpired, and he was supportive. After a week, we got the IT team coming back to us stating that the entire automation could be done in a month's time and it would cost us around £20,000 using RPA. So the original free automation would now cost an extra £20,000. The stakeholder was really not happy with the experience and vowed to move the process to third party. Eventually, within a year, my entire process moved to third party who did the automation free of cost. While people got redeployed, it still cost the offshore unit £1 million, which was the cost of my team every year. I chose to join the third party where the process moved, and while leaving, dropped an email on how the impulsiveness of the compliance head cost us our reputation and loss of business. He eventually got fired 8 months later. Edit. Thanks for the comments. To clarify some of the technical questions, the macro did not use system credentials, but just copy and pasted the data from the Excel sheet to the CRM. It did not access any database directly, nor stored any credentials within it. Also, the user system was not connected to the internet. Am I the jerk for kicking out my mother-in-law for making my kid eat mushrooms? My husband and I have a daughter. She's 10 and she hates mushrooms. The taste, texture, and smell of them she cannot stand. She's not a picky eater by any means, but she just doesn't like mushrooms. My mother-in-law lives with us and helps us by watching my daughter when she gets home from school. She makes dinner the nights we're working late for our daughter, as mother-in-law loves to cook, so she assured us that it would be no trouble for her to make our daughter dinner most nights. My husband and I both work in the medical field, so we have crazy, unpredictable schedules and are not home most nights to make dinner. Last night, my husband and I both had the night off work and were making dinner together. Mother-in-law went out for dinner with friends. Susie came to us crying, saying how she's sick and tired of being starved most nights, and if we can please make her dinners instead of mother-in-law. It's very public knowledge that Susie doesn't like mushrooms, but yet for the past few weeks, every single dish that my mother-in-law has made for Susie has had the main component of mushrooms in it. Portobello mushroom burgers, mushroom risotto, mushroom pasta, etc. These dishes aren't made when either myself or my husband are around, but when we aren't, that's all Susie is served to eat. She told us that if she politely refuses to eat these dishes, my mother-in-law will tell her to suit herself, but she's not going to get any other food for the rest of the night, and that she has to outgrow this stupid mushroom hatred. Both my husband and I were extremely upset that our kid is going to bed hungry every night due to my mother-in-law only making her dinners with one ingredient she doesn't like and not allowing her to eat anything else. When mother-in-law got home, we confronted her about this. She started going off, saying that Susie needs to grow up and get over this stupid hatred of mushrooms. I told her that she's essentially not even feeding her granddaughter. She disagreed and said it's tough love. She then proceeded to call me a jerk mother for prioritizing my career over our kid and helping her get over this dislike towards the vegetable. I told her to get out of my house because she will not disrespect me like that. She ended up leaving, but she had some nasty things to say to me on the way out. My husband is 100% on my side and feels that his mother is out of line. We've been getting nonstop messages from my two sister-in-laws and my mother-in-law calling us every name in the book for kicking her out and that my daughter needs to get over herself. Am I the jerk? Your mother-in-law doesn't understand that it's perfectly okay to have different tastes than someone else. She thinks she's broadening her food choices. From what you say, her food choices are plenty broad, so this is a power move, pure and simple. She's going to make her love mushrooms or else. Bottom line, your kid, your house, your rules. Not the jerk. I disliked mushrooms my whole childhood because in kindergarten they forced me to eat this disgusting mushroom soup. My whole childhood I went to the woods with my grandma to gather some, but I didn't eat them and was never forced. Then someday, when I was around 16 or 18, I tried them again, and surprise, I suddenly started to like them. Now I love them. If I would have been forced to eat them my whole life, I would still hate them probably. Edit. I want to thank you all for answering. This proves my theory that many food aversions are built from being forced to eat the stuff when you're little. Some we manage to overcome, some we don't. Point is, don't force them to eat anything. Well, what do you think? Is mother-in-law the jerk or not? Please let us know. Now I've got a real hankering for some cream of mushroom soup or a delicious steak with caramelized onions and sauteed mushrooms on top. Oh yes. Am I the jerk for telling my mom to give my sister her daughter back? This requires some context, so I'll keep it short. I, 18 female, have a twin sister who's also 18, who's had the same boyfriend since freshman year. He's also 18. He comes from a wealthy family and had a career lined up for him the day he graduated. My sister is actually pretty responsible, so is he, which is why it was a shock to everyone when she revealed that she was pregnant. She swears that it was an accident, and I believe her. She's not the type to skip out on that kind of stuff, and nor is he. Well, for obvious reasons, she finished senior year via distance learning. The baby was born right after graduation. I should also mention they are responsible parents, even though they're young. About 2 weeks ago, her boyfriend started his new job, and they're about 4 hours away. They moved and have been done for almost 2 weeks now. They agreed to leave the baby here. I still live at home with my mom while they move everything. I FaceTime my sister every day, and she shows me her daughter's room, and it's beautiful. She tells me how much she misses her. 2 days ago, just over a week of moving, my sister told my mom she's going to come get her. My mom said no, and that she abandoned her, and that she's a gold digger. Then her boyfriend called, and my mom said the same thing. They've been going back and forth for 2 days now. My sister called me a few hours ago and said she's not playing any more games with mom, and that tomorrow she's waking up at 4 a.m. and driving down here to demand her daughter back. And if my mom doesn't give her up, she says she'll get the police involved, get attorneys involved, and do whatever it takes to be reunited with her daughter. After that conversation, I went downstairs to talk to my mom. I said she should give my sister her daughter back. She said, "Your sister abandoned this baby. She doesn't deserve her." My mom said my sister is a gold digger, and if she wanted her kid, she would have got her by now. I reminded her that she does, and I warned my mom that if she doesn't give it to her nicely, my sister is not going to be so nice about it. But then my mom said, "Just mind your own business." And to be honest, she kind of had a point. This isn't my business. She also said the baby is what brings her joy, and she feels a special connection with her that she guarantees my sister doesn't have. I warned her one last time, "Mom, don't do this. Sister is not messing around, and this will get ugly." And that was that. I'm starting to think I was wrong to inject myself. It isn't my business, but my sister's right. She deserves her baby back, and I did witness the conversation of my mom offering to watch the baby while they moved. Am I the jerk? Update. It's 8:13 right now where I am, and my sister came and got her daughter. My mom did resist though. She said, "You're too young to be parents," and gave her the speech about their special connection, and my sister said, "I'm not leaving this house without my daughter." Sister threatened to call the police, and then mom walked outside to call her friend or something, and my sister just went upstairs into my mom's room, picked up her daughter, and ran out. She's gone now, but I'm meeting her for breakfast soon while she's in town. Mom's crying, saying, "My daughter is heartless and is too young to be a mom." That's all. I just wanted you all to know my niece is safely reunited with her mother, and soon her father as well. Not the jerk, but for real, your sister needs to get her baby away from your mother immediately. Throwing around words like abandon and special connection are red flags. She knows darn well your sister didn't abandon anything. She just doesn't care about anyone's feelings other than her own. Would I be the jerk if I tell mother-in-law not to bring soda when she visits? So I, female 31, find it kind of annoying that my mother-in-law always brings over soda for herself to drink only when she's invited for dinner. She doesn't even offer to share, but that's not my issue with this. We have water, lime water, tea, coffee, and sparkling water to drink, and I think it's impolite not to just drink what you're offered as a guest. I don't buy soda for everyday meals, but would buy it if I invited guests over for a birthday or some other celebration. And I don't think guests should require soda for meals on a Tuesday evening. And I feel it's kind of offensive that she feels the need to bring her own soda. Would I be the jerk if I told her how I feel? When we visit mother-in-law, she never offers water with the food. Every meal is served with soda and beer, sometimes wine. I don't bring my own water, even though I would prefer water with my meal. I just drink some soda. Edit. Thank you for all the judgments. I'm the jerk and will not bring it up to her. I do, however, feel that there may be some cultural differences here. Where I'm from, soda is not a normal everyday drink. As a kid, I was allowed to drink soda maybe 6 to 7 times a year, like for Christmas and birthdays. Today, it's normally served to kids and adults who don't drink alcohol when others would get beer or wine. And I would feel the same if a guest brought beer or wine for themselves to dinner on a weekday. That's why I don't feel like serving it on a Tuesday, and I still feel like her bringing her own soda is implying that I should be serving soda, which makes me feel like a bad host. But you're all right. It does not hurt anyone that she wants to bring soda and enjoy it. Some of you seem to think that this is about health. It's not. I'm not concerned for her health. I don't want to control what she drinks, but I did want to tell her that she made me feel not good enough. But thanks to you all, I'll just swallow that feeling and avoid talking about the issue. Also, some of you asked about kids. There are no kids involved in this. You're the jerk. Who cares? I mean, really, is there so little in your life that this could be an issue? Whether a guest brings soda and drinks it? You're the jerk. Please get a grip on your main character syndrome. It's not some personal affront to you that she likes to drink soda at dinner. And honestly, since you know she likes to drink soda at dinner, and instead of just buying some for her to have when she's over there, you've decided to die on the I won't buy soda, but also you can't bring your own hill. So you're a double jerk. This is an issue entirely of your own creation, and it only lives inside your mind, not the real world. Please get a grip. Your mother-in-law is an adult woman who can choose what she wants to drink at any given time without your approval. You're the jerk. You don't drink soda, so she brings her own. I don't drink soda either, but I don't ban it from my house. Maybe if my kids were older and were going to want some for themselves every time. Have you ever asked for a glass of water or helped yourself to one at their house? This whole question is just weird. Sounds like you don't like your mother-in-law and you're looking for things to complain about. Am I the jerk for not allowing my husband and stepson to make everything retroactively equal? I was married to a wonderful man for 10 years. He passed in an accident when our kids were 6 and 4. When I remarried 5 years later, my new husband had an 11-year-old son. So our kids are now his son, who's 15, my sons, who are 15, 13, and our daughter, who is 3. His parents set up a trust fund for his first son and for our daughter. I asked if they were doing anything for his 2 stepkids, and he said it was unfair to ask them to set money aside for kids that just came into the family. I accepted his answer because my older kids have money from their dad's life insurance, so they have a good nest egg already. My first husband's parents are great people and have accepted my stepson and my daughter as bonus grandkids. They've made an effort to treat them well and always include them in gifts for the family and on their birthdays and Christmas. My parents have also made an effort to be nice, but they are more standoffish with my stepson. They have a cordial relationship and always send him gifts and invite him along on family events. My parents just sold their farm and are splitting the proceeds amongst all my siblings and I. All the grandkids are also getting some money. The amount that my 2 sons and my daughter are receiving is about 5 times the amount that is in the trust fund that my stepson and daughter got from my husband's parents. My husband is now saying that it isn't fair that the 3 of the kids are getting so much more. I said that it wasn't my money and that my parents could decide for themselves how it should be split up. He thinks that all the money for the kids should be pooled and split evenly. I refuse to even try and get into the legality of it. It's literally not my money. He says that I'm being a jerk for singling out my stepson, but I just keep saying that it isn't my decision. I approached my parents and they said that the most they would do is split up my daughter's money with him since they are half brother and sister. That would mean that she gets less than her brothers. I just want to leave everything alone. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your husband definitely is though. So your new husband thinks your kids don't deserve his parents' money, but his kids do deserve your parents' money? Am I reading this correctly? Not the jerk. He was perfectly happy when it was his kids getting bonus money. He can suck it up now that your kids are getting the bonus money. He felt it was unfair to ask his parents to include his stepkids, but now wants your parents to include his kid? He seems to have an interesting view of what fair is. It's not your money to distribute, and your parents are doing the same thing that his parents did. You have no control over this. The 2 of you should split your own money fairly between all of your kids, but should not expect everyone else to do so. Not the jerk. The 2-minute swim. Like a good number of hotels these days, my hotel has a pool. It's on the smaller side and requires a separate key to enter, which you can check out at the desk for 1-hour time slots. Lots of reasons why we do this. And like most hotels, it closes at 10 p.m. Since my afternoon shifts go until 11 p.m., If someone wants to use the pool sometime between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., I am reasonable and can close it down later. Point is, if you want to use the pool when it's nearing closing time, I don't mind keeping it open a little longer, so long as you are reasonable and pleasant. Not this person, however. This past week, during one of my shifts, it was nearing 10 p.m., so I was getting ready to close down the pool and fitness center. It wasn't exactly 10 p.m., but it was no earlier than 9:55 p.m. when I started going towards the pool to close it down. Nobody was in it, nor did anybody use it that day. I entered with my master key, checked for dirty towels, and went towards the pool maintenance closet to turn the light off. It took about 2 to 3 minutes to do all that. As I shut the door, which might I add is right next to the entrance door, I get startled by a mother with 3 kids standing at the pool door knocking on the glass. I open the door with the mindset they needed something from the front desk or needed a room. "Hey there, is there something I can help you with, ma'am?" "We want to go swimming. Can you let us in?" "I'm sorry, but the pool is closed tonight. It reopens at 8:30 a.m. "Come on, why are you closing it early?" The clock in the pool did state it was 9:58 p.m., so she technically is correct. But really? Sidebar for a second. One of the many reasons we close at 10 p.m. is because the front desk needs to mop the entire pool floor at 10 p.m. That in itself can take about 15 minutes average, even longer depending on how much water splashes all over the place. We also disinfect all the chairs, tables, etc. because we live in a post-lockdown world, so we have to take that stuff more seriously. Add on the 5 or so tasks and a money drop drawer count and any check-ins that haven't arrived, and you can be swamped for your last hour. I knew we had at least 4 people that haven't arrived yet that night. Again, the pool closes at 10 p.m. It is now 10 p.m. It will reopen at... "Seriously? We've been standing here for 10 minutes. By the time you got here, we would have been done." No. I literally walked into the pool room no more than 3 minutes before you showed up, and I didn't have line of sight on the front door for 30 seconds max. I explained that I started closing the pool room no earlier than 9:55 p.m. and didn't see them there. She said that they went down an hour ago but couldn't get in. I'm honestly surprised they missed the big "See front desk for pool entry" sign on the door. At that point, I was done. I wasn't going to let them in. The door was closed and locked, so I said one more time that the pool closes at 10. Please come back in the morning before going back to the desk. She started saying some of the usual Karen stuff like, "I came here to swim and now we can't," and "I'm a shiny member. X Hotel would let us swim," etc. I just ignored her and went back to the desk where she followed me. She eventually gave up when she knew she wasn't going to get her way and I wasn't going to argue back. Think she also gave the morning front desk some crap too because she was added to our DNR for "We cannot accommodate." My mom is demanding I pay my brother's medical bills. My dad passed when I, 19 male, was 9. When I was 11, my mom married my stepdad. I have a brother, Chris, who's 14, who has extremely severe autism. He needs a lot of support with his everyday needs. He gets frustrated, and unfortunately, as he's got older, he started to lash out physically at the people around him. When I was little, I got on with my mom okay, but as a teenager, we had a lot of arguments. A lot of it had to do with my stepdad wanting to have the authority of a father over me, and me never really accepting that. But I also got pushed to the side a lot as all of the focus went on to looking after my brother, and that made me angry. I admit I became a bit of a tearaway, drinking, not getting back until early hours of the morning. When I was 17, my mom sent me to one of those residential schools for troubled kids, literally like the crappy daytime TV shows, which I'm pretty sure where she got the idea. I had no idea it was going to happen, and the school sent 2 members of staff to get me out of bed in the middle of the night. I was there for 6 months. It was pretty horrible, like a military-style thing with morning inspections and sad middle-aged men in silly uniforms barking orders at us. I was allowed a call from my mom once a week after the first month, but I never even took them. She also wrote me a few letters, but I never read them. When I turned 18, they couldn't legally keep me there, and the plan was for my mom to come and pick me up, but I decided on my 18th birthday just to leave myself. The school threw an absolute fit, tried to call my mom, told me I was being irresponsible, but I told them to buzz off. It was a bit difficult because I didn't have any money or a phone, and the school was pretty rural, but I managed to borrow a phone and call a friend who came to pick me up. I moved around between friends for a bit, but I'm pretty well set up now. I blocked my mom on everything and pretty much made sure she couldn't get in touch with me. The other thing that happened when I turned 18 was that a fund my dad had set up for me when I was born became accessible. There's now a lot of money in it. I mean, a lot. My brother has a fund too, but I don't think anyone can get into it until he's 18. Recently, my step-aunt reached out to me out of the blue to say that my mom and stepdad have really been struggling financially with Chris's care costs, especially now that he's getting older and more difficult for mom to control. And she said my mom was sorry about the way things happened between us and wanted me to come home. I said I wasn't interested in being part of the family now just because she needs my money. My aunt said that was cruel and that I had only ever made things more difficult for my mom. I feel a bit guilty about Chris, especially because we used to be close and I was good at calming him down. But I've just had it with my mom. Am I the jerk? Don't ever send money. Don't ever do it. Once you do, these types of people will never stop coming after you. Your dad wanted you to have this, a way to take care of yourself, a path to freedom. Don't bend. Your brother has his own funds. It's time to take care of yourself. And I'm so sorry your mother sent you to a place like that. She tried to dismiss you as a person and a son because it was easier for her. You deserve better. Wishing you all the best as you pursue your best life. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You've made your line in the sand pretty clear. I noticed that your step-aunt only reached out when your parents needed money, not when there was an angry, hurting teenager bouncing from friend to friend. You were a lot more vulnerable than they are. If you give up your money to help your brother, they won't repay it, as his needs will always be greater in their eyes. Use it to get set, get qualified, get a secure life. They will get his trust in 3 years and maybe be able to make a case to obtain early due to medical needs. Best thing you can do for your brother is to be secure in the future if and when he needs support as your parents age. You're not stable in your life yet. Also, get counseling or therapy. I know a Reddit cliche, but you've endured a lot. Working it through with someone impartial might help. Am I the jerk for leaving the babies inside by themselves? I, 20, am a mother of triplets whom are only 2 months old. I never expected in my life that I'd be a mother to triplets, so when I first became pregnant, it was definitely the last thing on my mind. I'm home with my babies all day long and had to even transfer my education to online. Sometimes I just need some fresh air, especially when I can't get them to stop crying and I find myself getting super frustrated to the point of tears. It's honestly so hard, and the dad isn't here to help as he's either at school or work. My fiance, who's 24, his parents rented us a main floor apartment, so when I step outside, I'm literally just sitting on the chair right beside the door. Plus, I have a baby monitor set up in their room and it has a camera on it. I can literally see them and hear them, so if anything happened, I'd be able to quickly get to them. Being able to step outside for a few minutes to take a breather is really important to me because I start to have mini panic attacks when I can't get them to stop crying, and I get really frustrated because I just feel super overwhelmed. Being able to go outside just gives me a chance to calm down. My fiance came home to me sitting outside while the babies were crying and freaked out on me, calling me a horrible mom and a bunch of other names that I'm not going to list here. He thinks that I was being super neglectful and putting the babies in harm's way, and even told his parents, and now everyone seems to be really against me. I grew up in the system. My fiance's family is the only family I have and I've ever known, so it breaks my heart that they're so upset with me. But I really don't think I was doing anything wrong or putting my babies in harm's way, but they seem to think otherwise. So here I am, wondering if I should apologize for my actions or if I am the jerk in this situation. I decided to show my fiance this thread. At first, he was really upset with me for sharing our personal problems with strangers on the internet, even though it's anonymous. But in the end, when he had a chance to calm down and hear me and all of you guys out, he actually apologized and promised me he'd be more involved with parenting and even is willing to take parenting classes, which I'll hold him to that. I just want to thank everyone for the support that you've all given me. It's brought tears to my eyes seeing how supportive you all were to a stranger on the internet. I don't think I ever received this much support before. Not the jerk. When I had my baby, one of the things the nurses told me repeatedly while in the hospital and during the home visits is that if she's crying and I know she's been fed, she has a clean nappy on and she isn't sick and I'm getting stressed out, it's okay to go outside for a few minutes to just collect myself. This advice was so important. It allowed me to do what I needed to do without feeling guilty. And those few minutes really do help in those times when they won't settle down. And I had one, let alone if I had 3. Not the jerk. When the caregiver is overwhelmed, you need to step away for a few minutes to collect yourself and breathe. Center yourself, calm down, do what you need to do. You'd only be a jerk if you left them alone for long stretches of time, but it sounds like you only do it for short periods of time and you monitor them when you're doing so. Nothing wrong with that. What does your fiance do to help with the babies? The whole purpose of the baby monitor is so that you can leave the babies in a room on their own. Being just outside the apartment door is no big deal, says a grandmother. It sounds like you're overwhelmed. You need some help with the babies from time to time. Either the father needs to be home more or his family should help out. 1 baby is a lot. 3 have you completely outnumbered. Not the jerk. Parents tried to reconnect. I pretended not to recognize them. I was raised mostly by my uncle and aunt. My older sister developed a serious illness when I was 6, and my parents decided that they couldn't care for both of us, I guess. So they kind of unceremoniously dumped me at my grandparents and my uncle took me in. Like, didn't even explain to me what was going on. Just, you're going to go visit Gran for a while, and never picked me back up. My grandparents and uncle explained it later, and they were pretty livid at my parents. I've seen my parents maybe 5 times since then, and not at all for the last 9 years. I decided to stop having contact with them when I was 12, and since I was the only one reaching out, all communication broke down. It turned out okay. I love my aunt and uncle, and it turns out they can't have kids, so they've always said I'm their miracle kid. I was just misrouted by the stork at first. I was formally adopted by them when I turned 18. I wish it had been earlier, but there were some red tape things that would have made that really expensive and difficult. I'm 21 now. My sister passed between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I made a trip back from school for the funeral. But I stayed in the back and left before my biological parents could talk to me. They called my uncle to try to talk to me, but I said I didn't want to, so he told them that I wasn't available at the moment. They finally caught up to me over Christmas when I went to midnight mass with my gran and approached me and tried to give me a hug. I did recognize them, but I pretended not to and just backed off and said, "Sorry, do I know you?" They said, "We're your parents." And I said, "My parents are at home," and went and sat down with my gran. They sat behind us and I could just feel the stare. And on the way out, they were like, "You really don't recognize us?" And I said, "Oh, are you my dad's brother? I think I remember you from when I was little." My gran thinks they deserved it by trying to come back to me like nothing had happened, but they wrote me a long letter about how hurt they are and how I should understand that they were trying to do the right thing and how they'll always be my parents and I can't change that. Other family members think I was too harsh as they're grieving, but I don't think they should get a pass just because they remembered me now that my sister is gone. Not the jerk. This was very petty, so much deserved, and I'm applauding you all the way for it. I'm glad that you ended up with parents who love and cherish you. Also, you were adopted, so they aren't your parents. Notice how in their letter they only focused on themselves, how hurt they were. Then they had the audacity to tell you how you should feel. These people are garbage and deserve to know and be told repeatedly that they're garbage. Not the jerk. Rinse and repeat. Am I the jerk for being brutally honest with my friend before her wedding? My best friend for the last 10 years is getting married in a few weeks. This past weekend was her bachelorette party. She got quite wasted, but I don't drink a lot, so I played it safer and stayed pretty coherent. At one point, she was in the bathroom throwing up and crying and looking through pictures of her ex on Instagram. All the other girls were comforting her and talking about what a jerk he is, etc. The next maybe hour turned into fixation on her ex, how they should have been the ones married, etc. Her ex recently had a baby with his new wife, so I understand it may have opened old wounds, but they split up 5 years ago. I'm also one of the few people who actually know why they split up, and all I can say is it was definitely her fault. After the hour, I tried to get us all out of the bathroom and continue the night. The next morning, things seemed fine, but then my friend was going through her phone and saw she had called her ex 10 plus times. She freaked out, but the calls were all so short, we assumed he didn't pick up. I told her she needed to delete his number from her phone and move on, because it wasn't fair to the guy she's marrying if she continues to be hung up on her ex. Everyone got really upset with me for being insensitive, and I was made to feel like it was my fault for letting her call him. Eventually, my friend asked me to go home early. I learned from one of the other bridesmaids that they spent the rest of the morning bashing me in addition to the ex. I was told part of a bachelorette party is getting closure with old relationships, and my judgmental attitude ruined it for the bride-to-be. I talked to my sister about it, and she said while my friend was being ridiculous, that it's my job to put aside my feelings for the bride as maid of honor. We are all in our 30s though, and this seems very odd to me. Am I the jerk? Update. Wow, so many comments. Thank you for all of your judgments. I just want to put this here, as a lot of people keep saying I should tell her fiancé. In any normal situation, I would agree, but in this case, she's been asked in the past to choose between him and her ex. She chose her ex. She made it clear to her now fiancé she would rather be with her ex. But her ex said he didn't want her and left, so she stayed with her now fiancé. He knows on some level. Telling him wouldn't be a big revelation and likely wouldn't make him end the wedding. It would just make him sad and rub his nose in something that he is aware of. Not the jerk. I'll never understand these friend groups that never tell each other the real truth. She doesn't sound like much of a friend, to be honest. Plus, I thought the point of a bachelorette party was one last night out as an unmarried woman, not spending the night wishing I was marrying my ex. The fact is, I feel bad for the groom because he's obviously second choice and he'll probably end up getting treated like crap. Clearly not the jerk here. You did nothing wrong in telling your friend to respect their partner and delete their ex's number. The group sounds problematic, and I hope you don't hold yourself in bad esteem because of their behavior. Not the jerk. What? It's your fault that she's hung up on her ex? That I'm assuming she cheated on and drunkenly dialed him 10 times after crying on the floor for hours? You're right, she should delete his number and be fair to the guy she's marrying. And how in the world is it your fault? Could you have taken her phone? Imagine that scene. Did you dial him? No. She's a victim. She will always be a victim. Nothing will ever be her fault. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the bride? Please let us know. Never marry someone if you know that you're their second choice and they'd rather be with someone else than you. This dude is totally just setting himself up for failure. How long do you think it'll be before she cheats on him, if she isn't already? Have a party on my birthday? Then we will drink all your beer. This happened in the late 80s when I was in college. I went to UConn, University of Connecticut. In my sophomore year, I was assigned to a room in a quad. During the 80s, the school ran out of dorm rooms, so they converted study rooms into dorms. These were deemed quads, so 4 students roomed there. My 3 roommates were seniors, all graduating. Since I was the owner of the room, UConn had an elaborate system to assign rooms. 3 friends approached me to be the 4th, so as to guarantee the room for the next year. I am pretty easygoing, so I said yes. This was a big mistake, since I found out that I'm not compatible with others and we constantly butted heads. One example. One of the roommates volunteered to bring their record player for the room, but then didn't allow me to play my records on it because it was the devil's music. For the record, I had Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, that kind of stuff. And no, this person was not religious, he was just being a jerk. The list of complaints could go on, but it all came to a head on my birthday. Weeks before my birthday, I informed my mates that I was throwing a party on my birthday and would like to have a party in the room. This was not unusual. There had been parties here before, thrown by one or the others. This was my first request for the room. The others said fine, and I started to invite my friends. I planned about 10 people. A few days before my birthday, all 3 came to me to tell me that they were going to throw a huge party on my birthday. When I protested, they said my friends could come as well, but the cover charge was $5. I pushed back, saying that I was buying my own supplies, so my friends shouldn't have to pay. They agreed. Later, I find that they invited a lot of people, and I wasn't going to even see my friends, let alone celebrate with them. The night of the party, my roommates tell me to have my friends identify themselves so they won't get charged. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. I was really upset that these guys were doing this, so I went down to the ground floor of our dorm and told anyone coming to the party that if you told the person taking money that you were there for my party, you wouldn't be charged. You can probably guess the rest. The party was a huge success. All the beer drunk, roommates out all their money. I have some sort of satisfaction. Guess you shouldn't have scheduled the party on my birthday. Only bummer was that I really didn't get to hang out with my friends because it was way too crowded. Before anyone questions, how did just about everyone get in for free without my roommates figuring it out? 1. People were coming in staggered, so 50 people didn't all just show up at the same time to make it obvious. And 2. All three were collecting the money at various times, so they didn't know that everyone was claiming to be there for my party until the end when they pooled their money.
Call me crazy, but I just never understood the appeal of partying. I'd rather get pizza and watch movies with Reddit boy any night than, drink a lot and be around a bunch of people I don't know and stuff.
Am I the jerk for disinviting my late wife's kids from my wedding? About a year ago, my wife, Anna, 60 female, of 25 years passed, 8 months after being diagnosed with cancer. Besides our 25-year-old son, Andrew, she also had 3 other kids, Allison, who's 42, Barbara, who's 40, and Caleb, who's 39, from a prior marriage. Their father was never really around, so I, 52 male, have raised them basically as my own ever since I married their mom. Anna's cancer was very difficult for me financially, and I wound up having to downgrade my car to pay for her medical bills and make withdrawals for my 401k and take on a lot of debt. Shortly after Anna passed, I met another woman, Beth, who's 49, who I have since married. Given that we're living together in Beth's house, selling Anna's house made a lot of sense. When we were packing up the house, I asked Anna's kids if they wanted anything, and they said they didn't. I invested a large amount of money renovating the house and getting it ready to sell, and eventually found a house flipping company that would take it on. On the day of the closing, I was surprised to find out that Allison had sent an email to the lending company telling them that she had been reading up on state law and that since Anna's kids weren't mine, they were entitled to the portion she would have gotten from the sale. Turns out she was right. I feel like Anna's kids deliberately chose to kneecap me, but they're insistent that Allison didn't know what was going on and was just asking questions. I should have been able to take the money Anna and I had saved up and start a new life, but now I'm probably going to have to sell the new motorcycle I just bought and have long wanted, and I'm not going to be able to get myself out of debt. This was supposed to be a fresh start for me, and now I'm stuck with the same old problems I've always had. The day of the eventual closing, I was still extremely upset. So when I woke up for work, I texted Allison, Barbara, and Caleb and let them know that I'd also been doing my own reading about our state's laws, and it turned out I'm not actually their father, and they should work on their relationship with the person who actually is. I also told them that they were no longer welcome at my wedding, which was the next weekend. Upon finding out that I had said that, Andrew was extremely upset with me. We met for lunch the following day, and I asked him to be my best man, but he told me that unless I apologized to his siblings, he didn't want to attend my wedding. I was hoping he'd get over it, but he hasn't talked to me since, saying that he's too old to be a 25-year-old child of divorce, and that he was offended that I got married the weekend after the anniversary of his mom's funeral. To me, that date isn't particularly meaningful, since the date that weighs on my heart is the one that she actually passed. Beth thinks I should just swallow my pride and apologize so that Andrew will talk to me again, but I just can't help but feel like I got done over. Wow, you're the jerk a million times over. You are so petty for telling them you aren't their father anymore when you raised them. They were entitled to that money just as you are, and it doesn't sound like they tried to do it maliciously. Nice job ruining those relationships for the rest of your life. I hope you come to thoroughly regret it. He's also only 10 years older than the oldest kid. They deliberately, even though they deny it, allowed him to pour money into renovations and they benefited from. OP was justifiably hurt. These aren't little kids or even young adults. They're in their 40s and they know what they're doing. The only person who's justifiably hurt is OP and his son. Alternatively, OP knew that the kids were legally entitled to Anna's part of the estate. He hoped to pull a fast one on them and is now mad that they knew the law. You can't say that's common knowledge, and the only way they had a legal handle at all was by exploiting the fact that he isn't biologically their father. He should take them to court for half the renovation costs. Are you kidding me? You basically tried to disinherit your deceased wife's kids and then want to know if you're the jerk for disinviting them to a wedding and telling the kids that you raised that you aren't their real father. Yes, you're the jerk, but you're the even bigger jerk for trying to disinherit them. Do you actually think that's what your late wife would have wanted? You're the jerk. You're the jerk. First, you totally ignored the fact that Anna's kids would be entitled to an inheritance from their mother. Second, you had a petulant toddler tantrum over having to sell your motorbike, which was an unwise purchase because you had to know about number one. Third, you retaliated against your stepkids for whom you were the sole father figure by hurting their feelings and basically disowning them because they had the nerve to want the inheritance from their mother, to which they were clearly entitled. I get that you went through a very difficult time, but so did your kids. All of them. It's not just the OP show. No wonder your biological son is so angry. Am I the jerk for buying my daughter her own Nintendo Switch after her older step-siblings refused to let her play? My wife has a son who's 12 and a daughter who's 14. They're not biologically my kids. Our daughter is 7, however. For Christmas, we bought them the Switch. To be clear, it was for all 3 and they opened it together. This was their first gaming console. All the games we purchased had multiplayer function. We also gave each kid their own controller. Christmas Day, things were fine. They all played together for hours. The day after, life resumed. My wife flew out to her dad's for his surgery. As I went to work each day, both older kids were to keep an eye out for the youngest during the remainder of Christmas break. I'd come home from work to find the two playing while the youngest sat quietly, obviously upset though. I'd ask, why isn't the youngest playing as well? I'd get responses like, in a minute, or this level is too hard for her. Most of the time, they'd give me a bunch of hot air without a definite reason. One evening, a huge fight broke out after the two paused the game and walked away. The youngest determined it was finally her turn. When they found out, all heck broke loose. I took the console away the next day. I told them that they could have it back when they agreed to let their sister play. Several days later, I come home and find the youngest in her room crying. They made her do all of their chores. In return, she would be given 15 minutes to play the game. Only they didn't hold up their end of the deal after she completed the chores. I discovered this wasn't an isolated incident. They've been bossing her around every day and using the console to manipulate her. I was livid. This was a gift intended for everyone. She shouldn't have to earn her time to play and then be given a ridiculous time restraint. I took the console away completely, but realized later this wasn't fair for the youngest who did nothing wrong. I decided to buy her a system just for her. I saw this being the only fix to eliminate the problem. The older kids got their system back, and I explained that their sister now has her own. Everyone seemed fine. Things, in my opinion, worked out great. That was until my wife returned home. The older kids told her how I've shown obvious favoritism for the youngest. They don't think it's fair the youngest gets to have a console to herself and in her bedroom. Their console has been in the living room since Christmas morning. They argued they should each have their own consoles so that they can play them in their separate rooms too. To be clear, the youngest needs her system in her room, or it would defeat the purpose of buying another one since the other kids use the living room TV. Even after explaining to my wife what had happened, she agreed it was a form of favoritism and that I should have made the rule all 3 can play or none at all. Like as if they'd actually obey that rule when I wasn't home. Currently, they're barely speaking to me and said to fix things I should buy a 3rd console. I'm kicking myself for buying the first one. ETA. I'm not sure why so many are baffled over the fact that the older kids were asked to keep an eye out for the youngest. That simply meant, as they know, call if there's a problem and I'll be right there. They were not expected or asked to do a single thing for their sibling other than picking up the phone and calling me. Not the jerk. Your stepkids are bullying your daughter. You took action to rectify that and did so in a very fair way. They wanted that console for themselves. Well, they got it. And now their younger sister has her own console. As for your wife, she's turning a blind eye to her kids' bullying behavior, and her kids clearly have her numbered. They are manipulating her with their ridiculous claims of favoritism. If anyone is showing favoritism, it's her when she chooses to excuse their bad behavior towards your daughter. The idea that you should have to reward your stepkids for their bullying by buying yet another console is absolutely ridiculous. Tell her to buy it herself if she really thinks they deserve to be rewarded for their bad behavior. I applaud you for standing up for your kid and not allowing her to be bullied. I recommend family counseling because it sounds like this issue goes deeper than a console. Your wife does not want to see or admit to her kid's behavior. Not the jerk, but you need a better childcare situation. Clearly, the older ones are not capable of watching your youngest and probably resent her for the added responsibility. Why don't you sit down with your wife and discuss what she thinks fair looks like for all 3 of them? Then have that same discussion with your kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Is it like a common thing nowadays for parents to not be able to control their kids? I don't even want to think of what my parents would have done if I had tried to pull this when I was a kid.
Am I the jerk for giving one daughter more inheritance? My husband and I have 2 daughters. Let's call them Emma, who's 32, and Sam, who's 29. My husband passed of a stroke 2 years ago, and he left everything to me. I'm rewriting my will as well in case something happens to me. Originally, everything was split 50-50 between the girls, but now I'm splitting about 80-20 in favor of Emma. Emma has ADHD and isn't doing great in life. In those days, everyone just assumed she was lazy and she didn't get the help children today get until she was in her teens. She just managed to finish high school and is working at a retail store as a stalker. It's backbreaking and she doesn't have much in the way of savings or anything. Her car was her father's when he passed. Sam is working in tech as a project manager and her husband is a doctor. They live in a $1 million house and have 2 kids. I'm not worried about Sam. She's always been very capable and excelled at everything. She was always the overachiever, and I don't think she needs help financially. Her and her husband probably take home $500,000 a year after taxes. I want Emma to inherit the house and car when I pass. I think it will be good for her because she can live in it or sell it and buy another one. Sam will be fine, and her husband have several houses and a summer home. But Sam is angry with me because I've made it clear that Emma gets most of our belongings. The bank savings and stocks will go to Sam, but if I live to my 80s, she won't have too much, probably 20 to 30% of what the house is worth. But I think it's fair because she's doing much better. Sam called me to yell at me, saying I'm favoring Emma. I reminded her of how much worse off Emma is than her, but she said they were both my daughters and they should both get 50-50 or it's favoritism. She reminded me that growing up, we always spent more on Emma than her. But that's because she was at the top of her class while Emma was failing. I put Emma in extra tutoring because she needed it more. She said I should will half of the inheritance to her kids for college funds, but I reminded her she makes more and can save for them. I told her it's not about me favoring Emma over her, but Emma is worse off and she will be fine, which has resulted in her hanging up and refusing to come over for Christmas. It's your estate to do with what you want. But don't assume that just because 2 adult daughters are at one place in life now, they won't be in different positions later. Also, will one daughter be an executor, have power of attorney, be involved in future elder care? If so, does your split of assets align with which daughter you'd want in those roles? Oh yeah, forget about power of attorney. Bet she wants Sam to look after her medical and financial future because Sam is better with money, but she has shown favoritism to Emma. She might regret that when Sam pops her in the cheapest care home in Alaska to keep her 20% bigger. Well, what do you think? Should OP split it 50-50 or not? Please let us know.
I mean, 80-20 makes sense to me, but you know how these Reddit people are. Favoritism this, favoritism that.
Customer completely ignored my existence and made my job more difficult. This happened the day after New Year's. For some unknown reason, we got slammed, pretty much equivalent to before Thanksgiving. Endless lines, customers needing help on the floor constantly, etc. I was cashiering, which I hate doing as it is, but this rush was just stressing me out. 1 hour felt like 5. I couldn't even take a drink of water. I'm not one of those people that gets ticked off if someone is on their phone or not being chatty. I don't care. All I ask is that if you're checking out, then be checking out. Don't have me start and then realize you have other shopping to do and be gone forever. And don't be so wrapped up in your phone call that you're not paying attention and I have to interrupt you. So I had a customer. She ran into someone she knew the next line over. I could hear them talking when I was ringing the customer ahead of her. I finally get to her. She doesn't move. She's so wrapped up in her conversation, she doesn't even acknowledge it's her turn. Other customers are looking back and forth at them. It wasn't like I could just take the customer behind her because our lanes are narrow. So I walk out and grab her cart. We unload the carts. A minute or two later, she takes the 2 steps forward. I say hello to be polite. Her and her friend are still lost in conversation. She either didn't want to hear me or ignore me. Whatever. Other people are still looking back and forth between them with a look of, seriously? Now, while I was emptying her cart, I noticed she had reusable bags. I already started bagging her stuff in paper and thought, well, it wasn't important enough for her to pause her conversation for 2 seconds and tell me. Too bad, she gets our bags now. I finally finish and tell her her total. She looks at me confused and says, "What?" So I repeat it. She puts her card in and returns to talking. She's so oblivious that she doesn't hear the card reader going off telling her to remove her card. I tell her and she says, "Oh." Finally, put her bagged groceries in her cart and give her her receipt and assume she'll move. Nope. She stands there and keeps talking to her friend, getting in other customers' way. Then her friend finishes and they stand in the walkway talking, getting in everyone's way. Someone later told me that 2 people were blocking the door. I assumed it was her. Usually stuff like this doesn't get to me, but it's like, how self-absorbed can you be? It's annoying when people block aisles because they're talking. This was like a whole new level. My girlfriend refuses to go after her baby daddy for child support because they're friends. I met my girlfriend on Tinder, and we were not exclusive to begin with. We get along great, and I thought we had a future. She got pregnant, and we were kind of excited to start a family. When the baby was born, it was very obviously not mine. I did not sign the birth certificate. I also did not break up with her, but I also told her that I would not be making myself financially responsible for the baby. We had planned for her to take a year off of work to be with the baby. She had already taken a maternity leave. I said she needed to go after the father for child support. She didn't want to because they were friends. I said I understood, but then she had to take full financial responsibility for the kid. I would help her with all of the child rearing, like changing diapers and feedings and the like, but not for paying for any of it. She agreed. She ran through her savings in about 6 months. She talked to me about helping with the baby formula and stuff, and I said no, that wasn't our agreement. She called him and asked for money, and he gave her a few $1,000s to pay for baby stuff, but told her not to contact him again. That is when she understood their friendship. So she went after him for child support. His fiancé found out about the whole thing and is thinking of breaking things off. The child support is enough that the baby will be taken care of and will not affect our finances. He called her crying because we messed up his life. He said that I could easily afford to take care of them and that I'm being a jerk for dragging his life through the mud. She feels terrible about it and blames me for not just stepping up and considering her as a single mom. I love my girlfriend and the baby, and I have no problem raising the baby, but I don't think I should be held financially responsible when the father has resources and tried to evade responsibility. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's good that you're willing to be a family with your girlfriend and her baby, and according to you, you could afford to support them. But that does not absolve the biological father of responsibility for the maintenance of his kid. And what if, God forbid, something happened to you and you cannot afford it anymore? What happens then? If the biological dad had a few thousand available to give away like that, I'm guessing he can afford to as well. So the ruined part is of his own doing, since he lied to his fiancée and hoped to forget the whole thing. OP, I can afford it. But yes, I think that the biological father has to support his kid. I actually plan to talk to my girlfriend about putting most of the child support into an investment fund for the kid's future, education or what have you. I will support our family, and the kid will have a great nest egg to start life. Not the jerk. He's the father. He should be responsible. However, if she's going through her finances without thinking about her responsibilities and she initially tried to pin the baby on you, is that not a red flag of potential issues that may crop up? Red flags. Proceed with caution, OP. I suspect you're in for a bumpy road ahead. I totally understand this guy fathered this kid and needs to step up, and the way you pressured your girlfriend to go to him, and you're not the jerk for that. But I'm kind of wondering where you're planning to go from here. If you're going to raise the kid as your own, and it sounds like you are, you can't realistically keep up the I'm not taking financial responsibility for it in the long run. Even legally speaking, in most countries, if you're dad, for all practical intents and purposes, even if you aren't on paper, you'll be asked to step up if necessary. You're the jerk. You sound just like my ex. He was willing to man up and financially support my twins until he heard through the grapevine that they might not be his. Well, this loser actually demanded a paternity test, and surprise, surprise, he wasn't the father. He flipped when he found out I had cheated on him, and the truth is, yes, I did cheat, but only because he was always trying to control me. If you ask me, controlling men deserve to be cheated on, and I have no regrets for the other guys that I was with. I have no idea which one was the actual father, and he kept trying to make me go after them for child support. Never gonna happen though, because most of them are my guy friends, and I don't want to damage that friendship. I feel so sorry for your girlfriend, and I hope she finds a real man who will step up and be a father to her baby, since you're obviously too selfish and delusional to be an actual man with your fragile little ego. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
Remember back when people used to get married before having babies? Sometimes I feel like people these days are just so lost.
It's okay, Karen. This next story should definitely help you regain your faith in humanity. My wife keeps going to the movies with the man who lives next door and makes me babysit. I'm 39, male. My wife, 34, female, and I live in a suburban house with our daughter, who's 10, Emily. Our neighbor next door, 48, male, is Walter. He's a single father with 2 daughters who are 14 and 12. We've been living here for a little more than 2 years. My wife really likes watching scary movies, but I never enjoy them. I get too scared and end up having a bad time, so I prefer to avoid them. Her friends sometimes go with her to the more popular ones, but she also likes older, indies, and foreign horror movies. She has always had a hard time finding people that have this niche interest, and that's why it was such a big deal when we met Walter and found out that he also shares this tendency. They very quickly started to make plans to watch movies together. I was invited to be a part of this, but I refused. I prefer to just stay at home babysitting Emily and Walter's daughters. Sometimes they go to movie theaters, but other times they just stay at Walter's place watching stuff at his home cinema. They usually have to go to another town in order to catch a specific function of some weird movie, so it's normal for them to come back very late. They eventually started doing stuff outside of watching movies, like going out for dinner. Walter invited all of us, including the kids, to go with him to a restaurant that a friend of his owned, but I said no because it was too expensive. I don't like that kind of place because I feel that they're a waste of money, and I didn't think the kids would enjoy it either. I insisted on staying with the kids and let the 2 of them go be themselves. This has become a regular thing, and it's now, in a way, a good deal for me because Walter pays for my wife's dinner and she can't no longer complain about me not taking her to fancy restaurants. As both their movie and dinner nights had become so common, I've grown a little tired of the burden of constantly babysitting. I talked to my wife and Walter about it, and he explained that he usually does not like leaving his daughters with babysitters. He says he's really comfortable knowing that they're being watched by an experienced father like me instead of some teenager. He nevertheless agreed that it was too much of a load for me and offered to start paying me a standard babysitter fee each time he goes out with my wife. I thought that was a fair approach to the issue, but my wife was fully against it. She says I should not be paid for babysitting my own daughter, nor the daughters of a close friend and our family like Walter. We've been arguing about this, but she insists on this notion and it's not open to change. She even gets mad every time I talk to her about it. Walter promised me that he will convince her, but he does not seem to have been able to do so either. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk for several reasons. 2 of which are calling taking care of your own kid babysitting and not really caring about your marriage. Don't be surprised if your wife ends up leaving you for Walter if they're not already having an affair. I'm sorry, OP, but it looks like your wife has a new husband, and somehow you're the babysitter. I kept reading this thinking this must be a joke. You're the jerk for asking for babysitting money, but this whole situation is so bizarre. I think you need to figure out if you want to be married and if she does, because right now, it doesn't seem like you are. To clarify, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a friend of the opposite gender who shares a hobby. The issue is, OP is refusing to participate in any aspect of his wife's interests or fill her romantic needs, letting Walter fill the whole vacuum of his neglect. Won't compromise and join them on any of the movies, even infrequently. Won't take his wife to a nice dinner because he thinks treating his wife to something nice occasionally is a waste of money. Insists on staying home when invited to join in non-scary movie activities, then whines about babysitting. Doesn't suggest any alternative group activities that they all might enjoy. So, judging by the content of this post, he's just encouraging his wife to go to Walter for all of her emotional and social needs. No way that could ever backfire. Your wife is dating your neighbor, and you think he should pay you? Oh man, you're the jerk. Walter and your wife might have a common interest, but they've tried to involve you in things outside of that, like going out to eat, and you refused. And now you're complaining about sitting at home and moping and babysitting, which you chose to do? Also ticking the box of taking your wife out for a nice dinner by letting someone else do it? You're the jerk. You're the jerk for basically outsourcing your wife to the neighbor. You don't like scary movies, okay. But to then say that it's great that another man is taking your wife to what is basically dates so you don't have to? The answer is to try to engage in your wife's interests and find stuff you two can do together, not to start taking a salary to watch the kids. You're the jerk. It's not babysitting, it's being a parent. Also, are you aware you're pushing your wife into the arms of another man? You're the jerk, and you're basically asking your wife's boyfriend to pay you so he can date her. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
What would you do if I wanted to go to the movies with another man, Reddit boy?
Enjoy the peace and quiet while you're gone.
How dare you?
Am I the jerk for selling my house and not renewing the lease of a family with a sick kid? I, 47 male, inherited a property from my father 11 years ago. For the past 5 years, I've been renting the house to a nice family with a kid who's 5. They've been great tenants and there haven't been any issues. A month ago, I was approached by a realtor about selling my property. He had a buyer who was interested and was ready to offer $60,000 over market price because of the location. This was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. My tenants have a lease through mid-March. I've always renewed every year around this time. I contacted the husband, Michael, and let him know that I would not be renewing this time. To say that he was upset was an understatement. It turns out that he and his wife are currently in hospice with their son, who has a terminal heart condition. The doctors have given him a month or 2 to live. I knew that he was sick, but I never knew it was so serious. Michael told me that there's no way right now that they can pack up the house and find a new rental in time. The hospice where they are currently in residence is over 3 hours away, and he thinks it's terribly unfair that I expect him to sacrifice any of the time he has left with their son in order to move. He called me a heartless sociopath. I suggested that they have a family member take care of their packing and find a new place, but the only family they have around is the wife's elderly father. I'm not sure that I believe this because they're too young to only have one parent between them, and I'm sure there are siblings somewhere. I then suggested they hire a moving company to handle the packing and try to find a rental online, or possibly an Airbnb for a while. He claims he can't afford a moving company because of his son's medical expenses. I feel bad about the situation and realize I'm making things harder for them, but it's not my responsibility to take care of them. I've given them the legally required notice. My wife thinks that because of the money I'll be making, that I should offer to pay for a moving company and an Airbnb after they leave the hospice. I don't want to do this because it would cost me a big chunk of the profit from selling the house, and again, their situation is not my responsibility. This is the risk people take when they rent. My wife is now giving me the cold shoulder. So, am I the jerk for selling my house and not renewing the lease of their family? Edit. The purchase agreement has been signed. I'm not selling to a developer, but to a family that needs to move to the area for their son's schooling. I'll call the buyer and explain the situation, and then, if they choose, they can contact the tenants and make arrangements. It's a tough call. In terms of business, I get it. Greed is a thing. But you can't blame your wife for seeing you differently. You just showed her your true character. Going with my heart, you're the jerk. I'm with you here. It seems evident that as soon as money is in OP's hands, everything else falls by the wayside, including a family going through a hard time. A family that, as OP said, have been really good tenants. I don't think an Airbnb and a moving truck will dent OP's wallet that hard. There's being frugal, then there's being greedy. I've got a few properties, and from a business perspective, you learn that looking after a good tenant is long-term financially the best strategy. If the buyer is so keen, explain the situation and just ask him or her to wait a few months for the sale. I'm guessing if the kid sadly does end up passing, the parents will want to move out anyways. I vote you're the jerk. You're the jerk. You aren't making things harder for them. You're potentially making them miss time with their kid who won't be here for much longer. You are well within your right to do so and probably won't give it another thought once the money hits your bank account. It sounds like your wife is a different kind of person, and good for her. Also, people aren't taking a risk by renting. They probably just haven't inherited homes from their rich daddies. Your humanity only costs $60,000. Good to know. You're the jerk. You could have told them your intent before selling, but instead you let greed lead you. Great, you made $60,000 at the expense of another family. I was a landlord, and when we wanted to sell our place, we told our tenant first, gave them the option to buy first before we even listed the place. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Don't make others uncomfortable? About 10 years ago, I worked in a team of scientists when one day our boss told me others perceived me as contemptuous. I was shocked beyond words. I certainly did not feel superior or feel contempt for anyone. I was so flabbergasted I was silent for probably 2 solid minutes. I asked for an example of when I said something I had said or had done that gave someone that feeling. He said he couldn't divulge that information. Okay. Then I asked for an example he had experienced or observed himself. He said he had none. I said, since I have no clue what I've done, how am I supposed to adjust my behavior? He said he didn't know. I said, basically then, I just need to not talk? He said he wasn't sure. I knew right then what to do. I'm pretty introverted, and as a kid, I didn't talk for years. I rarely spoke until I was about 13 years old. Got lots of notes from teachers about how quiet I was. I would answer questions when directly asked, but rarely spoke otherwise. So, my malicious compliance in this situation was easy for me. I just stopped talking except when asked a question. I made a point of smiling, showing I was listening, nodding in agreement, etc. I was extremely polite and agreeable. Pretty soon, some big issues came up that I had specific knowledge about. I knew how to solve them, but no one else asked. A huge conflict came up between two of our labs because one group wanted it one way and the other group had a different opinion. They fought and fought. People were having secret meetings in their offices to try to win. And when they finally arrived at the action they chose, it was wrong. In fact, both groups were wrong, and the whole experiment failed. It's important to note that no one was hurt. No property was damaged or anything like that. Just a lot of wasted time and expense on materials. But I never said a word. This went on for 3 weeks. The lab's budget had to be revised. They had to cut travel expenses, which I was okay with because I didn't want to travel anyway. So, no conferences for anyone. This is a big deal for a lot of researchers because it's how we gain notoriety to be able to get grants, among other things. Finally, a colleague asked me why I hadn't spoken for so long, why I was so quiet. Was something wrong? I explained about being told others perceive me as contemptuous. She had the same expression I did when I was told. She said she didn't believe anyone had said that about me. I honestly was surprised again because I believed our boss. Then she asked me what I thought about the experiment design and why it was failing. I told her about the solution I believed would work, which was actually surprisingly simple. She recognized it had a good chance of succeeding and asked me to share the idea at the next department meeting. At that meeting, she asked me again in front of everyone, and I repeated what I told her. Several people asked why I hadn't spoken up sooner. I explained I had been given feedback that indicated I caused others to feel uncomfortable. The whole table of colleagues also looked at me stunned. I said I was committed to not causing such bad feelings and couldn't figure out how to communicate because the feedback didn't give me any specific guidance. Everyone looked at the director at that point, and he said, "We shouldn't discuss personal issues." Ha! It was my issue. So I said, if anyone here perceives me as contemptuous and said as much to our boss, that's the reason I haven't been talking. If you don't feel that way about me, let me know and I will stop being silent. Someone else said we needed to hold a vote so there wouldn't be any more confusion or talking behind anyone's back. They voted 100% for me to talk normally and that they didn't agree that I was ever contemptuous. That director slowly stopped coming to work, month by month after this episode until he was only showing up 1 day a week. Finally, he took a lab position somewhere else and one of my colleagues was promoted to director. And the experiment was a success. The next year, I got a grant to keep the research going and paid for 2 people to be able to travel to the related conference to present our findings. Am I the jerk for causing a scene when my husband's family showed up for dinner again? This evening, I made a scene in front of my husband's family while they ate dinner at our house. My husband's family came over for dinner the second time this week. They were also over last week and the week before. Typically, I'm not consulted on these visits. I'm just informed of them, sometimes with little or no notice at all. The visit 2 weeks ago, I had 30 people. This one, I had lots of notice. Last week was 15. During these previous visits, I feel I was a good and welcoming host. I made food, cleaned up, made conversation, etc. This afternoon, I was exhausted and not feeling well after a really busy work week and sleep issues. My husband and I have a young daughter who also came home from daycare coughing. We've been dealing with bouts of sickness, plus some really big transitions in the last few weeks. Around 3 p.m., my husband informed me that family members were coming over, 6 in total. I told him I wasn't feeling well and was upset he didn't ask me about it before confirming. I was also upset because we had only had 1 dinner together this week. The previous night, he had been at a work dinner and was over at his dad's earlier in the week. Plus, we had already had the family. He initially disregarded me and left the room, but he later apologized and reassured me that next week would be quiet and we would spend time together and I could just be upstairs tonight and not have to worry about cleaning anything up. Plus, dinner was taken care of already. I had an early dinner with my daughter and put her to bed at 7, which is when his family showed up. I stayed upstairs in bed initially, but went down and briefly explained I was not feeling well and our daughter was sleeping. However, there was a lot of noise with kids running around who woke up my daughter, so I went down again around 9. At this point, my husband was slurring his words drunk because when he gets together with his dad, they drink. When I realized he was slurring his words, I lost it. I asked him to stop drinking in front of his family because he would be grumpy and hungover the next day. I told him I was tired of it and tired of cleaning up after everyone. Honestly, I can't remember everything I said because I was raging, but I do know that I didn't swear or yell, though I was raising my voice. I told him that his behavior was unhealthy and that it was not okay. I basically had a heated argument with him in front of his family, clearly making them feel uncomfortable. But they also knew that I was sick, yet stayed until after 10 p.m. while the kids ran around making noise. They stayed late earlier in the week too, and at that time didn't even offer any help. My husband and his dad are both passed out now. The other family and kids have left. I'm embarrassed that I lost my composure, but I'm also just so fed up. I feel knots in my gut and guilt for not holding it in. But I feel like I've been holding a lot in, and I couldn't contain it any longer. Not the jerk. Your husband is an inconsiderate jerk. And not consulted? That is absolutely unacceptable. It's your house, and these things need to be agreed on before being planned. But the part that really infuriates me is, if these are his dinners and gatherings, and he refuses to even include you in the planning, or even agreement to have people over, why are you cooking for and cleaning up after them? Why on earth isn't he taking care of the food and cleanup? Also, getting drunk constantly at family dinners is a huge red flag to me. Probably because my father's side of the family has a lot of alcoholism, and they're the only people I know who do exactly that. Not the jerk. Maybe this is a cultural thing, but I absolutely cannot imagine in any world where people would need to be told that staying late and being loud when one of the two adults who owns the house is in bed sick. You shouldn't have to have these conversations with your husband. You shouldn't have to ask for basic consideration and respect. Am I the jerk for telling my son to get over the divorce? My ex-wife, Natalie, and I had an amicable but not loving marriage. We had 2 kids, Michael, who's 28, and Lily, who's 30. When Michael was about 10 years old, she and I saw that we no longer had romantic feelings, but a beautiful friendship. But for reasons at the time, mainly our kids, we decided to continue the marriage until our kids left home. Basically, nothing has changed on a daily basis. We still were the same couple as always, but we didn't force something we didn't want. When Michael moved away for college and home permanently at age 19, we decided to make the gradual move and finally make our divorce official. Michael didn't handle it well. For months, he tried to convince us to try couples therapy, intervention, that it was a bad phase in our marriage and not to sign the divorce paper until we were sure. We explained together and separately that it wasn't a bad phase and that we stay together for the good of the family only. Over time, he conformed, but hasn't accepted until today. I'm currently married and so is Natalia. We have a great relationship and often spend Christmas and New Year's together with our kids. What happened? Michael is engaged to Liam, and we recently had dinner with him, his in-laws, fiancé, and Natalie to celebrate the engagement. Michael still has a habit of making spiteful comments about the divorce and how traumatizing his parents' experience of getting divorced was. Several times I said that this was something that hurt us to hear because above all, my ex and I cherish that our kids don't suffer from our decision. During dinner, we were talking to his in-laws, and they asked how long we had been apart and how good we had a relationship, etc. Michael at some point said, "It wasn't such a good thing for the family. It was a traumatizing experience to see your inspiration as a couple break up and your family fall apart." To say that Natalie and I were embarrassed that he said it in front of his in-laws is not necessary. I had my limit and I said, "Look, Mike, I understand your feelings, but it's been 9 years that your mother and I haven't been together, and you didn't even live with us during this process. We're already in another moment of our lives. I think it's time to get over it and turn the page." He was quiet and stayed that way for most of dinner, saying only what was necessary. Later, I got a text from him criticizing me, saying I should respect his feelings and he was just venting which was a valid thing, and I shouldn't say that in front of his in-laws. Am I the jerk? If your son wants to vent, he needs to go to a therapist. What your son was doing was criticizing you in front of his future in-laws. That's not right, and you were very gracious in the manner in which you corrected him. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Venting at such an event is not appropriate. He should seek the help he needs if he still can't accept the situation. You have a right to your own happiness, and you've made every effort to make the situation work. Not the jerk. It was an appropriate dinner conversation, but he brought it up first. 9 years is a really long time to not be able to adjust to a change made when he was an adult. Have you ever explained to Michael that you and your ex were only staying together for the kids for most of his life? He can't just attack you about a decade-old divorce every time you interact with him. That's ridiculous. You're the jerk. Because you said this, we cherish that our kids don't suffer from our decision, but your son is suffering from it. You deceived your kids, playing the part of a happy marriage, and then shattered their worldview. It doesn't matter if it was for their own good, but it absolutely pulled the rug out from under them, and your son is suffering from it. Great, you're friends. Great, you're happy. But you don't get to tell your son how and when he has to deal with the trauma that you inflicted on him. Think of it this way. The moment he left home, you got divorced. You don't think that potentially made him feel responsible? That if only he had stayed or realized it earlier, you would still be married? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his son? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law she's no longer allowed in my house after telling my kids to give her money? A little backstory first. I'm 48, male. My sister-in-law, who's 45, moved in with my wife, myself, and our 3 kids, who are 18, 16, and 13, a few months ago, due to her being kicked out of her old place. I have a job that pays me well and allows me to spoil my kids, but they all know the value of $1. However, every week my wife and I give them $50 to spend on whatever they want as an allowance, and they can earn more by doing chores. My sister-in-law has a job that gives her enough income for her to live comfortably, and she's supposed to be saving some to get a new place while living with us. Well, last week my sister-in-law heard my eldest son talking to his mother and I about what chores he can do to earn $75, and she asked us if we actually gave our kids that much money and that it was too much money for kids to have. And we told her that they were our kids and we could give them however much we see fit to give them. I thought she dropped it, but I was wrong. Last night, my youngest son came to me and told me that his aunt had demanded he give her $40 from his money so she could go buy something. When he told her no, she apparently started screaming at him that he was an ungrateful brat and tried to grab his wallet and take the money. Immediately, I went to my 2 older kids and asked them if she had ever asked them or told them to give her money, to which my daughter responded that her aunt had asked her a couple of weeks beforehand if she could have $50, and my son told me that she had asked, but he had always shut her down immediately, telling her he was saving for a car. After hearing this, I went to sister-in-law and told her to get her stuff and get out of my house, and that she was no longer allowed in it if she thinks it's okay to steal money from my kids, yell at my kids, and call them mean names. My wife thinks I went about it the wrong way, but that I was overall right. But her family thinks I was a jerk for kicking her out and refusing to allow her in, and said that my kids should have just given her the money because family helps family. Am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law she's no longer allowed at my house when she told my kids to give her money? Not the jerk. Toxic people don't have any right to stay in your life just because of your relationship to them. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.